Chapter 1876. Ancestor Summoning. Everyone was shocked when they heard that. How arrogant. He actually dared to make the heaven's sanctum summoning ancestor summoning. However, all the experts in the surroundings fell silent when they saw Yi Xian's azure sword, and their expressions gradually became solemn. The sixth layer of spacetime. The sword actually entered the sixth layer of spacetime. The sixth layer of spacetime. After all, even Mu Tian and the otherworldly demonic king were only at the 13th stage, and they could only enter the fifth layer of spacetime. However, this human could actually enter the sixth layer of spacetime? Mu Tian stared at Yi Xian with an extremely solemn expression. The sword before him had really surpassed the fifth layer of spacetime. Who exactly is this human? Mu Tian wasn't the only one, even the otherworldly demonic king was stunned. He didn't expect Yi Xian to be able to enter the sixth layer of spacetime. After all, Yi Xian was only at the 9th stage of spacetime. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly smiled. Master Mu Tian, I'm still waiting for you to summon your ancestor. Mu Tian hesitated for a moment before he cupped his fists. Sir, I was rude just now. Please don't take it to heart. Yi Xian looked at Mu Tian, and the smile on his face gradually disappeared. Do you really believe that I won't take it to heart just because you said so? Mu Tian's expression became slightly unsightly. Yi Xian suddenly grinned and opened his palm, and the azure sword flew into his hand. Since Master Mu Tian doesn't want to summon your ancestor, then let's have a spar. I'll be responsible for my own life and death. He'll be responsible for his own life and death. All the experts looked at Mu Tian. Would Mu Tian dare to accept the challenge? Mu Tian's expression was extremely unsightly. If he refused, how could he continue living in this world? However, if he accepted the challenge, then it would be a life and death battle. This human before him was so mysterious, and he had no confidence at all. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly said, You're not going to accept the challenge, and you're not giving me any benefits. Master Mu Tian, what's the meaning of this? Give me benefits? Mu Tian was stunned, and then he hurriedly said, Please forgive me for my rudeness just now. With that said, a storage ring silently appeared in Yi Xian's hand. Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. Damn, this person has some skills. He didn't even sense any spatial fluctuations before the storage ring appeared in his hand. He might not be able to beat them. Yi Xian naturally had to stop while he was ahead. Otherwise, wouldn't he be embarrassed if the other party really summoned his ancestor? Although he could enter the 8th spacetime continuum, or even the 9th spacetime continuum, he could only go in and do nothing else. This move could only be used to scare people. Yi Xian glanced at the storage ring on his hand. There were a total of 100,000 supreme-grade heaven crystals in it. It was enough for a long time. Yi Xian sheathed the azure profound sword. Forget it. Hearing this, Mu Tian relaxed. He was truly a little afraid of Yi Xian. Furthermore, there was no need for the heaven's sanctum to provoke an expert like Yi Xian. Spending some money to resolve this matter naturally couldn't be any better. However, he was still slightly worried because Yi Xian was very close to the otherworldly demonic race. At this moment, a slightly hoarse voice suddenly resounded from the side, Young Master Yi. Yi Xian turned around and saw a black-clothed expert floating not too far away. This black-clothed expert's entire body was covered in black clothes, and his true appearance couldn't be seen. Moreover, there was an extremely dense spirit death energy around him. The otherworldly spirit king by Yi Xian's side said in a low voice, This is the patriarch of the nether spirit race, Ming Dao. Yi Xian nodded slightly and looked at Ming Dao. Do you need something? Ming Dao looked at Yi Xian. After this exhibition ends, I wonder if young Master Yi would do me the honor of visiting my spirit dimension. Yi Xian smiled. Qingcheng, Yi family, ancestral hall, ancestors above. Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From this moment on, Yi Xian's position as crown prince will be removed, and Yi Lang will succeed him. The one who spoke was an old man wearing a black robe. Not far behind the old man stood a youth with a faint smile hanging on the corner of his mouth. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi family's elders. Why? At this moment, a somewhat timid voice suddenly resounded in the ancestral hall. Everyone looked over and saw a little girl standing at the door. The little girl was about 12 or 13 years old, and her two small hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face was sickly pale, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of timidity in her eyes. This little girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's blood sister. This time, when she heard that the family wanted to remove Yi Xian from his position, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. Yi Ling, what are you doing? The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall, and said timidly, Great Elder, my brother Yi Xian is a crown prince. Why did you remove his title for no reason? The Great Elder looked coldly at Yi Ling. This is a family matter. What are you interrupting? Leave. Yi Ling was obviously afraid, and did not dare to look at the Great Elder, but she did not leave. Instead, she plucked up her courage and entered the ancestral hall. She bowed again to the elders on both sides. Dear elders, my brother is fighting with the Li family over the mining rights at Nanshan. He is fighting for the family, and his life is uncertain. But the family is using a groundless excuse to remove his crown prince position. This is really unfair. Impudent. The Great Elder suddenly raged. Whether he is removed or not, it is not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away from me. At this moment, the new crown prince Yi Lang suddenly laughed. You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others. The Great Elder said coldly, then flog 30 times. Soon, 2 guards of the Yi mansion rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists, and said angrily, This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the family for so many years, and even now he is fighting for the family, but the family is so unfair to him. One of the guards glanced at the new crown prince Yi Lang, and he knew that his chance to show off had come. The guard sneered, Young Master Yi Lang inherits the crown prince position, and it is everyone's wish. What are you shouting for? As he said this, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap. The crisp sound of the slap was heard, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly turned red and swollen, but she did not cry. She just covered her cheek with her hand. Yi Lang looked at the guard, and smiled, What's your name? The guard hurriedly bowed, I'm Zhang Mu, greeting the crown prince. Yi Lang nodded, You're not bad. After I become the crown prince, I will need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on. Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed, and hurriedly bowed deeply. I will go through fire and water for the crown prince, and I will risk my life for you. Yi Lang nodded slightly, drag him out. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall, so don't show any mercy, understand? Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang, and when he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu suddenly saw something, and he suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe, and the robe was tattered, and there was blood everywhere. This person was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from the South Mountain. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's mouth curled into a cold smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The Great Elder narrowed his eyes, and his face was gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He quickly looked at Yi Lang, and was about to speak, when Yi Xian suddenly leaped in front of him like a ferocious tiger. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He charged towards Zhang Mu once more. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man, how dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian looked up at him, and snarled, "Your man?" As he spoke, he stepped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, "Prince, save me." Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's appearance, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being sliced by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed out. "Brother, it hurts, it hurts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu, and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Peng! Qingcheng, Yi Clan, Ancestral Hall. Ancestors, Yi Xian has no talent, no virtue. From now on, Yi Xian's position as prince shall be replaced by Yi Lang. The one who spoke was an old man in black robes. Not far behind the old man, there was a youth with a faint smile on his face. This person was Yi Lang. On both sides were the Yi clan's elders. Why? At this time, a timid voice rang out in the ancestral hall. Everyone turned to look and saw a little girl standing at the door. She was about 12 or 13 years old, and her hands were tightly gripping the hem of her skirt. Her face had a sickly pallor, and she looked a little weak. There was even a trace of fear in her eyes. This girl was called Yi Ling, and she was Yi Xian's younger sister. When she heard that the clan wanted to remove Yi Xian, she disregarded her illness and rushed over. The black-robed old man frowned. "Yi Ling, what are you doing?" The little girl called Yi Ling bowed to the people in the ancestral hall, and said timidly, "Great elder, my brother Yi Xian is a prince. Why did you discard him for no reason?" The great elder looked at Yi Ling coldly. "This is a matter of the clan, why are you interrupting? Leave." Yi Ling was clearly a little fearful. She did not dare to look the great elder in the eye, but she did not leave. Instead, she mustered up her courage and walked into the ancestral hall. She bowed to the elders on both sides of the hall and said, "Elders, my brother is currently fighting with the Li family for the mining rights of the mine in Nanshan. He is now fighting for the family, and it is unknown whether he is alive or dead. However, the family has used a groundless excuse to remove his position as the crown prince. Impudent." The great elder suddenly raged. "Discard him or not, it's not up to a little girl like you to decide. Men, drag her away." At this time, the new prince, Yi Lang, suddenly laughed. "You should be flogged 30 times as a warning to others." The great elder replied coldly, "Then flog her 30 times. Soon, 2 guards of the Yi clan rushed in. Yi Ling clenched her fists and said angrily, "This is unfair. My brother has risked his life for the clan for so many years. Even now, he is risking his life for the clan. The clan is so unfair to him." One of the guards glanced at the new prince, Yi Lang. He knew that this was his chance to shine. The guard sneered, "Young Master Yi Lang inherits the position of prince. What are you yelling about?" As he spoke, he raised his hand and slapped Yi Ling's face. Slap! A crisp slap sounded, and the right side of Yi Ling's face instantly swelled up. However, she did not cry. She only held her cheek tightly. Yi Lang looked at the guard and smiled. "What's your name?" The guard hurriedly bowed. "Subordinate Zhang Mu greets the prince." Yi Lang nodded. "You're not bad. After I become the prince, I will need 10 guards. You can be my guard from now on." Hearing this, Zhang Mu was overjoyed. He hurriedly bowed deeply. "This subordinate is willing to go through fire and water for the prince." Yi Lang nodded. "Drag him away. This person is disturbing the ancestral hall. Don't hold back. Understood?" Zhang Mu glanced at Yi Lang. When he saw the murderous intent in Yi Lang's eyes, he understood. He immediately grabbed Yi Ling's hair and dragged her out. At this moment, Zhang Mu seemed to see something and suddenly stopped. In the ancestral hall, everyone turned their heads to look outside. Not far from the ancestral hall, a young man was walking towards the ancestral hall. The young man was wearing a tight-fitting robe. The robe was tattered and covered in blood. The young man was Yi Xian, who had rushed back from Nanshan. Seeing Yi Xian, Yi Lang's lips curled into a sinister smile. Inside the ancestral hall, the elders frowned. The great elder narrowed his eyes, his face dark and gloomy. No one knew what he was thinking. From afar, when Yi Xian saw Zhang Mu dragging Yi Ling, his face turned savage. Who gave you the guts to touch my sister? When Zhang Mu saw Yi Xian, his face changed. He hurriedly looked at Yi Lang and was about to speak. At this time, Yi Xian was like a ferocious tiger leaping in front of him. Before the latter could react, Yi Xian's fist landed on his face. Pung! Zhang Mu felt a wave of dizziness, and he stumbled and fell. However, Yi Ling did not stop there. He charged towards Zhang Mu again. At this time, Yi Lang suddenly roared, Yi Xian, he's my man. How dare you? Yi Xian suddenly stepped on Zhang Mu's chest. Pooh! Zhang Mu spat out a mouthful of blood. Seeing this, Yi Lang's face turned ugly. Yi Xian looked up at him and snarled, your man? As he spoke, he stepped on Zhang Mu's face. Zhang Mu's face turned into a bloody mess, as he screamed, Prince, save me. Yi Xian did not care about Zhang Mu, as he walked to Yi Ling's side. Seeing Yi Ling's state, Yi Xian felt as though his heart was being cut by a knife. He clenched his fists, and his entire body trembled. When Yi Ling saw Yi Xian, her tears flowed, brother, it hurts, it hurts. Hearing this, Yi Xian's expression turned savage. In the next instant, he charged in front of Zhang Mu and kicked Zhang Mu's head. Pung! Chapter 1877. The otherworldly spiritual king's face sank when he heard Mu Tian agree so quickly. Why is Mu Tian so confident? Yi Xian looked at Mu Tian and smiled, you're extraordinarily confident. Mu Tian smiled, it's fine if you want to back out now. Yi Xian turned to look at the otherworldly spiritual king, how many minds are there in the heaven's sanctum? The otherworldly spiritual king replied, about 12. Yi Xian looked at Mu Tian, 12 minds? Mu Tian didn't hesitate, sure. Sure. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone present was slightly shocked. 12 heavenly crystal mines, that was the entire wealth of the heavens abode. Why did the heaven's sanctum dare to make such a bet? Yi Xian smiled, then let's begin. I don't think the heaven's sanctum master will use this dimensional soul spike to compete with me, right? Mu Tian smiled, of course. He turned around and saw a black-robed powerhouse standing not far away. Just like Dao Yi, the black-robed powerhouse was completely shrouded in a black robe. The black-robed man walked up to Yi Xian and said in a hoarse voice, you won't go back on your word, right? Yi Xian smiled, I won't. The black-robed man nodded. He opened his palm and a square crystal seal appeared in his hand. Boom! In an instant, the space around the crystal seal started to distort. At the same time, the surrounding spacetime started to distort. Under everyone's gazes, the crystal seal entered the fourth layer of spacetime. After a brief pause, it immediately entered the fifth layer of spacetime. The fifth layer of spacetime. The expressions of all the experts became solemn when they witnessed this scene. What is this crystal seal? How can it enter the fifth layer of spacetime? Suddenly, the black-robed man said, suppress. The crystal seal suddenly started to spin. In the blink of an eye, a terrifying spacetime pressure suddenly appeared in the hall. Some of the weaker powerhouses were directly crushed. Everyone's expressions changed drastically, including the otherworldly spiritual king by Yi Xian's side. This square crystal seal actually brought the spacetime pressure of the fifth layer of spacetime to reality. That was not the end. Under the control of Black Robe, the square crystal seal suddenly became illusory. In the blink of an eye, it arrived at the sixth layer of spacetime. The sixth layer of spacetime. The countless experts in the surroundings were flabbergasted by this scene. This square crystal seal could actually enter the sixth layer of spacetime? However, this was not the end. After the square crystal seal entered the sixth layer of spacetime, a spatial pressure that was 100 times stronger than before suddenly appeared in the surroundings. Boom! In an instant, the entire heavenly crystal palace turned into nothingness. The experts in the surroundings were horrified as they fled. Even the otherworldly spirit king, Mu Tian and Ming Dao retreated. The strength of the spacetime pressure was something that even they were extremely fearful of. They were all experts at the peak of the 13th phase and could enter and control the 5th space. However, they were still unfamiliar with the 6th space. As if they had thought of something, the few of them looked at Yi Xian in shock. Yi Xian didn't even take a step back. At this moment, the otherworldly spirit king was slightly stunned. Could it be that young Master Yi has been acting weak all this time? Black Robe spoke in a hoarse voice before Yi Xian. This item is called the Spacetime Spirit Seal. Not only can it be used to enter the 6th layer of spacetime, it can also be used to control the spacetime energy of the 6th layer of spacetime. I wonder if your sword can do the same. Yi Xian smiled. No wonder all of you are so confident. So it's because you have such a divine treasure. Black Robe said, Young Master Yi, it's your turn. As he spoke, he opened his palm, and the spacetime seal returned to his hand. In an instant, the terrifying spacetime pressure vanished without a trace. Yi Xian suddenly asked, I wonder if your spacetime seal can enter the 7th layer of spacetime? Black Robe said, It can't. The 7th layer of spacetime is filled with boundless profundities. No divine treasure can enter it. This is absolutely. Right at this moment, the azure sword in Yi Xian's hand suddenly trembled violently. In the next moment, the azure sword directly entered the 6th layer of spacetime. Before anyone could react, the azure sword had entered the next layer of spacetime, the 7th layer of spacetime. The expressions of all the experts changed drastically at the sight of this. The otherworldly spirit king and Ming Dao, who were not far behind Yi Xian, were already trembling. The 6th layer of spacetime was unfamiliar to them, but the 7th layer of spacetime wasn't unfamiliar to them. It was simply a legend that they didn't even dare to imagine. But now, they had personally witnessed the 7th layer of spacetime. Black Robe fell silent before Yi Xian, and his hands were trembling. The 7th layer of spacetime. Others might not know what it meant to be able to enter the 7th layer of spacetime, but he did. At this moment, Yi Xian opened his palm, and the azure sword appeared in his hand. He looked at Black Robe and smiled. Do you still want to compete? Black Robe fell silent for a moment before he said, We've lost. Yi Xian looked at Mu Tian and smiled. Master Mu Tian, where's my celestial ore? Mu Tian's expression was extremely unsightly. He hadn't expected that Black Robe would actually lose. After all, Black Robe was from that place. Meanwhile, Black Robe suddenly opened his palm, and a spatial ring floated over to Yi Xian. Yi Xian glanced at it, and there were a total of 12 celestial ore within the spatial ring. Yi Xian naturally wouldn't stand on ceremony, and he put it away with a smile. Thank you. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Meanwhile, Black Robe suddenly said, May I know where you're from? Yi Xian stopped and said with a smile, What? Black Robe asked, Are you selling this sword? Yi Xian's eyes narrowed slightly. You want to buy this sword? Black Robe nodded. You can name a price. We can discuss any conditions. Yi Xian smiled. Let me think about it. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. Seeing that Yi Xian didn't directly refuse, Black Robe's tightly clenched right hand slowly loosened. Since he didn't directly refuse, it meant that there might be room for discussion. He was wary of Yi Xian, but from his point of view, Yi Xian's sword could enter the 7th spacetime, but that didn't mean that Yi Xian himself could enter the seventh spacetime. It was just like his spacetime seal. The spacetime seal could enter the sixth spacetime, but he couldn't enter the sixth spacetime. A godly item that could enter the seventh spacetime must be obtained. After Yi Xian and the others left, Mu Tian looked at Black Robe and said in a deep voice, "Elder Jean, is it possible that Yi Xian is from a level 6 civilization?" Black Robe shook his head, "Absolutely impossible." Mu Tian was a little puzzled. Why? Black Robe said softly, "Because even the Tian, a clan, had never come into contact with a level 6 civilization. Moreover, entering the 7th spacetime doesn't mean that you can be considered a level 6 civilization. Not to mention becoming a level 6 civilization, even becoming a level 5 civilization isn't that simple. The complexity and difficulty of this requires a race to struggle for at least tens of millions of years." Mu Tian's face darkened. Black Robe said again, "Keep an eye on this person for me. I need to make some preparations." After saying that, he turned around and left. Mu Tian looked into the distance, and a hint of worry flashed in his eyes. Obviously, this Elder Qi was determined to get the sword in Yi Xian's hand. Yi Xian followed the spiritual king back to the otherworldly spirit tribe. After returning, Yi Xian immediately said, "Senior, do you know who that Black Robe is?" The spiritual king shook his head, "I don't know. However, I can be sure that he is definitely not from Heaven's sanctum." Yi Xian said, "Can you help me investigate?" The spiritual king nodded, "Of course." When I returned, I had already sent people to investigate him thoroughly. But at this point, he said in a deep voice, "I'm afraid it will be difficult to find anything." After a moment of silence, Yi Xian smiled and said, "Senior, I need to go into seclusion for a period of time." The spiritual king nodded, "All right." After saying that, he hesitated for a moment before saying, "Thank you for your help today, little friend. Otherwise, our celestial coffin and celestial crystal mine would have belonged to Heaven's sanctum." Yi Xian said with a smile, "It's nothing." The spiritual king said with a smile, "No matter what, thank you." Yi Xian nodded and did not say anything else. He entered the hall and returned to Xiao Ta. After entering Xiao Ta, Yi Xian's face darkened. That Black Robe was obviously targeting him. So the question was, who was the other party? To be able to possess such a spatial spirit seal, it was definitely not an ordinary person. It was very likely that he was from a level 5 civilization. A level 5 civilization. Yi Xian frowned deeply. Was he being targeted by a level 5 civilization again? Yi Xian lowered his head to look at the azure profound sword in his hand and shook his head with a smile. He thought that after coming to Tianling Cosmos, he could live a few days of peace, but he did not expect that a mysterious enemy would appear. What a headache. At that moment, Xiao Ta suddenly said, "Young master, don't worry. We don't care about life and death. If we're not happy, we'll fight. When have we ever been afraid of anyone?" Yi Xian's face darkened. "Xiao Ta, I realize that you've been a little arrogant recently." Xiao Ta said with a serious expression, "Young master, I've been modified by Sister Tianming. In the entire universe, apart from the 3 swords, who can do anything to me, Xiao Ta?" Yi Xian was speechless. Xiao Ta said again, "In any case, I'm not worried about anything." Yi Xian was speechless. Ever since Xiao Ta had been modified by Qing, he was no longer an ordinary arrogant person. Apart from the 3 swords, he no longer cared about anyone. No, apart from Qing, this guy even looked down on his father and big brother. Without thinking too much, Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground and began to cultivate. He had to start breaking through to level 10 now. Somewhere in an unknown star field. The Illusion Race. The Illusion Race's clan leader stood on the city wall and looked at the starry sky. At that moment, he had risen from level 16 to level 17. Level 17 was also known as the Absolute Despair Realm. This was the limit that a level 6 civilization could reach. The reason why he could break through was because of the woman in the plain dress's guidance. The woman in the plain dress. Thinking of this, the illusion race's clan leader's expression gradually became serious. Even now, every time he thought of the woman in the plain dress, he could not help but feel fear. Just how strong was that woman? He did not know. He had no way of estimating her strength. At that moment, the space in front of the illusion race's clan leader was suddenly torn open. The next moment, an illusion race powerhouse appeared in front of the clan leader. The powerhouse said excitedly, "Clan leader, we've found young Master Yi." Hearing this, the illusion race's clan leader's pupils suddenly shrank. Seeming to have thought of something, Yi Xian frowned. "I've broken through a lot recently, but why hasn't there been any movement in the sword Dao imprints of my father and big brother?" At the thought of this, Yi Xian sensed the 2 sword Dao marks, but there was no movement at all. Yi Xian's face darkened. This sword Dao imprint couldn't have been tampered with by his father, right? At that moment, the otherworldly spirit king's voice sounded from outside the hall. "Young friend Yi Xian." Yi Xian recollected his thoughts and left Xiao Ta. When he opened the door, the otherworldly spirit king said in a deep voice, "Young friend, I have bad news." Yi Xian frowned slightly. "What is it?" The otherworldly spirit king nodded. "That black-robed man is from a level 5 civilization." Yi Xian chuckled. "Just as I guessed." The otherworldly spirit king said again, "He is determined to obtain your sword. He might make a move soon." Yi Xian said softly, "I never thought that I would be targeted by someone from a level 5 civilization the moment I arrived. I really admire myself." The otherworldly spirit king said in a deep voice, "His target is your sword." Just as Yi Xian was about to speak, a terrifying pressure suddenly swept over from the sky. Boom! In an instant, the entire sky became illusory. The otherworldly spirit king's expression changed drastically. "He's here." Yi Xian raised his head to look at the sky. The sky suddenly split open, and a mysterious expert wearing a black robe slowly walked out. Seeing the black robe, the otherworldly spirit king's face immediately darkened. The other party was not giving the otherworldly demonic tribe any face. The black robe looked down at Yi Xian and said in a hoarse voice, "Young Master Yi, have you made up your mind?" Yi Xian smiled. "How much are you willing to pay for my sword?" The black robe said, "Young Master Yi's life." Yi Xian's lips curled up slightly. "In other words, if I don't sell it, I will lose my life. Am I right?" The black robe said, "Yes." At this moment, the otherworldly spirit king suddenly said, "Sir, you are being too overbearing." The black robe looked at the otherworldly spirit king. "Does the otherworldly demonic tribe intend to interfere?" The otherworldly spirit king looked straight at the black robe. "So what if I interfere?" The black robe nodded. He waved his right hand lightly, and in an instant, more than 30 illusory figures appeared around him. Seeing the 30 illusory figures, the otherworldly spirit king's face immediately turned grim. Even the weakest of these illusory figures was at 12 Dan. Among them, there were even 5 who were at 13 Dan. Including the black robe, there were a total of 6 13 Dan experts. 3 13 Dan experts. One must know that the otherworldly demonic tribe only had 2 13 Dan experts, and there were slightly more 12 Dan experts, but that was still a total of 9. In terms of strength, the otherworldly demonic tribe was already superior to the otherworldly demonic tribe. The otherworldly spirit king's complexion turned awful. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly smiled. "This is a matter between you and me. It has nothing to do with the otherworldly demonic tribe. Let's talk elsewhere." There was no reason for him to drag the otherworldly demonic tribe down with him. After all, the otherworldly demonic tribe didn't owe him anything. On the contrary, they had already helped him enough. If he were to drag the otherworldly demonic tribe down with him now, it would be a little dishonorable. In the sky, the black robe nodded. Sure. The otherworldly spirit king opened his mouth to speak but hesitated. Yi Xian smiled and said, Elder, this matter has nothing to do with you. I am grateful to the otherworldly demonic tribe for your hospitality and help over the past few days. The otherworldly spirit king sighed deeply. Young friend, I am very sorry. He wanted to help Yi Xian, but the price he had to pay was simply too great. He was the head of the otherworldly demonic tribe, and he couldn't allow his emotions to affect his decisions. One must know that if he were to forcefully help Yi Xian, it would mean the deaths of countless tribesmen. Furthermore, there was no guarantee that he would be able to help them. One must know that the black robe before him was from a Tier 5 civilization. That was not an existence that the otherworldly demonic tribe could deal with at the moment. Yi Xian smiled. Elder, we will meet again. After saying those words, he vanished from the spot. When he reappeared, he was already in a vast starry sky, and the black robe and the others were already standing before him. Yi Xian opened his palm, and the verdant profound sword appeared in his hand. Looking at the black robe, he smiled and said, Do you want to fight me one-on-one or gang up on me? The black robe replied, Gang up on me. As soon as he said those words, the experts behind him charged toward Yi Xian. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. Damn it, this isn't playing by the rules. A wisp of a savage smile appeared on the corners of Yi Xian's mouth as he gazed at the few tens of people that charged towards him. In an instant, his entire body was covered in blood, and in the next moment, he suddenly slashed forward with the azure sword in his hand. Chi! A blood-red sword ray tore through the sky. The leader of the group, a 13th phase expert, punched the sword ray. Rumble. The sword ray shattered. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly appeared before him, and he slashed down with his sword. Sword drawing technique. 2,800 stacked sword drawing techniques. This was his current limit, his true limit, because he had even used the power of his bloodline. As this sword slashed down, the fourth layer of space-time was directly shattered. Rumble. The 13th phase expert was forced back several thousand zhang. However, at this moment, a powerful force swept over and instantly engulfed Yi Xian. Bang! The sword ray shattered while Yi Xian retreated explosively for 30 kilometers. As soon as he stopped moving, an enormous palm that was 300 m long suddenly descended from the sky, and the powerful pressure it emanated crushed and obliterated the space he resided in. Yi Xian stomped his right foot on the ground and drew his sword. A ray of sword light slashed directly onto the enormous palm, causing it to tremble violently while a destructive force erupted from it. Yi Xian blocked it with his sword and activated his sword domain. Bang! The powerful force was completely blocked by his sword domain. Meanwhile, the space he resided in suddenly became illusory. Yi Xian swiftly turned around. A mysterious expert was silently chanting an incantation nearby, and then Yi Xian gradually started to descend. In the eyes of others, he was still standing on the spot, but he was actually falling madly. A spatial abyss. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly became illusory, and he returned to reality in the next moment. Black Robe's face sank when he saw this. This spatial abyss is useless against Yi Xian? The experts nearby were just about to attack again when Black Robe raised his right hand, and they immediately retreated to the side. Black Robe opened his right palm and pressed it down lightly. In an instant, countless strands of terrifying spatial pressure suddenly surged out from all around Yi Xian. The fifth layer of space-time, the 10,000 dimensional spatial pressure. Yi Xian's face was expressionless as he allowed the spatial pressure to drown him. However, he was completely unharmed. Black Robe's eyes narrowed. How could this be possible? As he spoke, he opened his palm, and the space-time spiritual seal showed up in his hand. The next second, the space over Yi Xian's head suddenly split open. Then a space-time pressure that was dozens of times stronger than before swept down. As the space-time pressure appeared, the space around him disappeared bit by bit. The sixth layer of space-time pressure. Yi Xian still didn't dodge, and he allowed the spatial pressure to crush down on him. Boom! The area where Yi Xian was directly annihilated, but he was completely unharmed. Seeing this, Blackrobe's pupils suddenly shrank. How is this possible? In the distance, Yi Xian's lips curled into a ferocious smile. I'm immune to any spatial pressure. As soon as he finished speaking, he disappeared on the spot. A ray of sword light instantly slashed in front of Blackrobe, who blocked it with his arm. Boom! The ray of sword light shattered, and at this moment, a ray of sword light suddenly engulfed him. Core sword domain. Boom! As the ray of sword light shattered, Blackrobe retreated rapidly. As he retreated, a blood-red flying sword suddenly slashed at him. Blackrobe once again blocked it with his arm. Pust! Blackrobe's right arm was sent flying, and at the same time, the green profound sword slashed at Blackrobe's chest. Bang! Blackrobe retreated tens of thousands of feet away, and his body shattered. Seeing this, the corners of Yi Xian's mouth curled up slightly. He suddenly realized that when the spatial abyss and spatial pressure were ineffective against him, these so-called Phase 13 experts in front of him weren't that strong. What was the difference between a 10th stage and a 13th stage? In terms of spacetime attainments, a 13th phase expert could directly use the 5th layer of spacetime to kill a 10th phase expert. The spacetime pressure of the 5th layer of spacetime was definitely not something a 10th phase expert could withstand. But Yi Xian was an exception. He was immune to spacetime pressure. From another perspective, if one wanted to kill Yi Xian, they could not use spacetime pressure. They could only use pure strength. Blackrobe looked at Yi Xian. Why is spacetime pressure ineffective against you? A wisp of a savage smile appeared on the corners of Yi Xian's mouth. Because I have a younger sister, understand? The black-robed elder. P.S. Asking for votes. Chapter 1879. Sister? Blackrobe was stunned. What the hell? Yi Xian didn't waste his breath. He transformed into a blood-red ray of light and vanished on the spot. Blackrobe's pupils constricted. He, who only had his soul left, couldn't resist Yi Xian at all. He hurriedly said, "Attack together." Blackrobe's pupils constricted. The mysterious experts behind him charged at Yi Xian. Rumble. In an instant, the entire star region started to collapse bit by bit. When their spacetime pressure was ineffective against Yi Xian, the mysterious experts had a headache. This human's sword was too terrifying. They didn't dare to go head-on against the green profound sword in Yi Xian's hand. It wasn't just the sword, the human's sword technique was terrifying as well. Most importantly, even if they escaped into the 5th layer of spacetime, the human could still follow them in. Although the human couldn't use the spacetime pressure of the 5th layer, he could still enter it. When they saw Yi Xian enter the 5th layer of spacetime, they were stunned. What's going on? A rank 10 expert can actually enter the 5th layer of spacetime? Most importantly, the spacetime energy of the 5th layer of spacetime was useless against this human. In the 5th layer of spacetime, Yi Xian suddenly slashed down with his sword. A blood-red ray of light instantly slashed down, and everywhere it passed, the spacetime energy of the 5th layer of spacetime dodged. In the distance, the mysterious expert's expressions were unsightly to the extreme. Meanwhile, a rank 13 expert suddenly took a step forward. He slowly clenched his right hand, and in an instant, a powerful force condensed in his fist. In the next moment, he suddenly smashed his fist forward. Rumble. The blood-red ray of light shattered, and the rank 13 expert retreated repeatedly. Meanwhile, a flying sword suddenly slashed down. The rank 13 expert's pupils constricted. He opened his palm, and a round shield suddenly appeared in front of him. Rumble. The round shield shattered. At the same time, he retreated explosively, and he retreated directly into the endless spacetime abyss. After entering the spacetime abyss, the expert's expression changed drastically. They weren't like Yi Xian, who could ignore the spacetime abyss. There was an extremely terrifying spacetime gravity in the spacetime abyss, and this was what experts like them feared the most. The stronger the spacetime, the more terrifying the spacetime abyss. After entering the spacetime abyss, the expert fell at a terrifying speed. In the process of falling, his physical body began to be destroyed bit by bit. The expressions of the nearby mysterious experts changed when they witnessed this scene, and they retreated in unison. No one dared to save him. There was no way to save him. If they wanted to save him, they had to enter the spacetime abyss. But how could they dare to enter the spacetime abyss? Just like that, the expert who fell into the spacetime abyss was annihilated bit by bit in despair. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly said, "So all of you are so afraid of the spacetime abyss." When they heard Yi Xian's words, the expressions of the remaining 4 rank 13 powerhouses changed greatly, and they didn't hesitate to leave the 5th layer of space. Originally, this place was their advantage, but at this moment, they discovered that this place had become Yi Xian's advantage. Not only could Yi Xian ignore the spacetime pressure, but he could also ignore the spacetime abyss. How could they fight against him? In the distance, Black Robe stared fixedly at Yi Xian. At this moment, he was shocked to the extreme. He hadn't imagined that not only could Yi Xian enter the 5th layer of space, he was even immune to the spacetime pressure. Without the spacetime pressure, he noticed that they didn't have any advantage when facing Yi Xian. When he thought up to here, Black Robe had the intention to retreat. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly vanished on the spot, and Black Robe's pupils constricted. Stop him. As soon as he finished speaking, the 3 rank 13 powerhouses by his side charged at Yi Xian, whereas, Black Robe himself turned around and vanished at the end of the starry sky, and the rank 12 powerhouses retreated successively. Presently, they weren't a threat to Yi Xian at all. In the distance, Yi Xian was fighting 3 rank 13 powerhouses by himself. Rumble. Yi Xian was suddenly blasted back by a punch from one of the powerhouses, and he'd just stopped when an afterimage instantly flashed over. At the same time, an extremely terrifying force shot straight towards his face. Yi Xian stomped his right foot on the ground, and in an instant, a wave of sword light enveloped him. Core Sword Domain. Rumble. The wave of sword light shattered as soon as it appeared, but the rank 13 powerhouse was blasted back over 10 kilometers. Meanwhile, the space above Yi Xian suddenly split open, and a fist descended straight down. Yi Xian's body suddenly became illusory. In the next moment, he'd entered the 5th layer of space, and the fist had vanished without a trace. The expressions of the 3 rank 13 powerhouses instantly became unsightly when they witnessed this scene. Once Yi Xian entered the 5th layer of space, they wouldn't be able to do anything. Because they didn't dare to enter the 5th layer of space at all. If they did, then they might be sent into the spacetime abyss by Yi Xian, and once they were sent into the spacetime abyss, then they would definitely die. Most importantly, Yi Xian wasn't afraid of the spacetime abyss. The 3 powerhouses glanced at each other, but they didn't attack again. Instead, they turned around and vanished into the distance. It was meaningless to continue fighting because they couldn't do anything to Yi Xian. Yi Xian raised his head and looked at the end of the starry sky. After a while, he turned around and left, and it didn't take long for him to arrive at Heaven's Sanctum. Heaven's Sanctum was located in the heavenly world. As one of the 3 great powers in the heavenly spirit cosmos, Heaven's Sanctum's strength was naturally unquestionable. As soon as Yi Xian arrived in Heaven's Sanctum, the master of Heaven's Sanctum, Mu Tian, appeared in front of him. Mu Tian's expression instantly became unsightly when he saw that Yi Xian was still alive. Yi Xian smiled and said, "Let me ask you a question. Who is that black-robed man?" Mu Tian fell silent. Yi Xian suddenly drew his sword. A sword howl resounded abruptly. In the distance, Mu Tian's expression changed drastically, and then he swiftly took a step forward and smashed his fist forward. At the instant this fist smashed forward, a strand of extremely terrifying spatial pressure instantly drowned Yi Xian's sword. Rumble. The entire horizon suddenly boiled, and in the next moment, Yi Xian's profound azure sword suddenly appeared in front of Mu Tian. Mu Tian's pupils shrank. My space-time pressure is actually useless against this sword? He didn't have time to think and blocked with his arms. Boom! Mu Tian's arms instantly broke and he instantly retreated 1,000 feet away. But before he could stop, a flying sword suddenly slashed at him. Mu Tian's pupils shrank. He stomped his right foot and his entire body directly entered the fifth layer of space-time. However, in the next moment, the profound azure sword actually followed him into the fifth layer of space-time. Mu Tian was shocked in his heart. With a thought, a golden runic shield appeared in front of him. Boom! The golden runic shield was directly smashed by the profound azure sword. But at this moment, Mu Tian had already retreated to the other side. Mu Tian's expression changed drastically when he saw that Yi Xian still wanted to attack, and he hurriedly said, "The Spirit Beast Clan." "He's from the Spirit Beast Clan." Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. "The Spirit Beast Clan that left this cosmos and became a level 5 civilization?" Mu Tian took a deep look at Yi Xian. "That's right." Yi Xian was slightly puzzled. Why would they target me? Moreover, if I'm not wrong, they've been targeting me the moment I arrived in this cosmos. Am I right? Mu Tian fell silent. Yi Xian suddenly said, "Next, I'll ask you a question, and you'll answer it. If you're slow, I'll slaughter your heaven's palace." Mu Tian's expression instantly changed, and he stared fixedly at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said again, "Answer my question just now." Mu Tian's expression was slightly unsightly. When had the heaven's palace ever been threatened like this? At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly opened his right hand, and the profound azure sword flew directly into the heaven's palace. Chi! In the blink of an eye, more than 10 bloody heads flew into the sky. Mu Tian immediately said, "I wanted to deal with the otherworldly demonic tribe, so I asked for their help. However, I didn't expect them to discover the sword in your hand." Yi Xian said, "That means that they're not targeting me on purpose." Mu Tian solemnly said, "Yes." Yi Xian fell silent. "Damn it, so they're scheming after seeing my wealth." Yi Xian asked again, "Where is the Spirit Beast Clan?" Mu Tian shook his head, "I don't know." Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. Mu Tian continued, "I really don't know. I can only contact them through voice transmission talismans. As for where they are, I don't know." Yi Xian fell silent. At this moment, Mu Tian solemnly said, "Sir, our heaven's palace has no ill intentions towards you. Our initial target was the otherworldly demonic tribe, and our heaven's palace has no intention of interfering in the matter between you and the Spirit Beast Clan. I hope that you can be magnanimous." Yi Xian pondered for a moment before he said, "I have a good temper, and I'm an honest person. To me, anything can be negotiated. However, this. Do you understand what I mean?" Mu Tian was stunned for a moment before he said, "You." At this point, he seemed to have thought of something, and his face darkened. "Damn it, you're asking for benefits." Mu Tian glanced at Yi Xian before he opened his palm, and a spatial ring appeared in his hand. "There are 5 celestial crystal mines in this spatial ring. Please accept them." Yi Xian opened his palm, and the spatial ring flew into his hand. He put it away and turned to leave. Mu Tian's gaze gradually turned dark after Yi Xian left. Human, this enmity. Right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of Mu Tian. Mu Tian's expression changed drastically. "You," Yi Xian grinned, "I like to annihilate everything I do." As soon as he finished speaking, the azure profound sword in his hand suddenly vanished, and a ray of light flashed. Mu Tian was horrified. At this moment of life and death, he utilized his strongest ability once more, the fifth layer of space. In an instant, boundless spatial pressure obstructed his path. However, it was like the pressure didn't exist before the Azure Profound Sword. Hiss. The Azure Profound Sword pierced the center of Mu Tian's forehead. Bang! Mu Tian's soul was directly absorbed. Yi Xian gazed at the innate talent below with a calm expression. In the next moment, he charged down. Since they were enemies, then he had to annihilate them. He didn't want to see his enemies take revenge if he didn't annihilate them all. Chapter 1880. When Yi Xian charged into Heaven's sanctum, cries of agony resounded throughout the entire sanctum. The experts in Heaven's sanctum didn't expect to be ambushed by a human and were caught off guard. By the time they reacted, their heads had already flown off their bodies. That was because Yi Xian's sword was simply too fast. However, Heaven's sanctum's experts reacted quickly and gathered all the experts in the sanctum. Not only that, the experts of Heaven's sanctum began summoning their ancestors. Boom! A ray of white light suddenly shot into the sky from Heaven's sanctum. In the next moment, a terrifying aura suddenly swept down from the sky, causing the entire sky to boil. At this moment, Yi Xian had already slipped away. Not only had he killed the Sanctum Master, he had also killed 2 of the rank 13 experts. Heaven's sanctum would soon be devoured by the otherworldly demonic tribe and the Netherspirit tribe. The otherworldly demonic tribe and the Netherspirit tribe would definitely not miss this opportunity. As soon as Yi Xian left, the experts of Heaven's sanctum who had just summoned their ancestors were dumbfounded. What was going on? At this moment, a woman appeared in the white light above Heaven's sanctum. The woman looked 90% similar to a human. The only difference was that she had a horn on her head. This woman was the first sanctum master of Heaven's sanctum, Mei Li. Mei Li looked at the distant horizon and opened her palm. Then, she clenched her fist and the surrounding space suddenly trembled. Gradually, a strand of consciousness floated into her palm. It was Mu Tian's consciousness. The strand of consciousness in Mei Li's hand trembled, as though it was saying something. A moment later, it completely disappeared. Mei Li fell silent for a moment before turning to the right. In the next moment, she disappeared from the spot. At the end of the endless starry sky, after confirming that no one was chasing after him, Yi Xian stopped. The moment he stopped, he suddenly turned around and saw a woman with a horn on her head. It was Mei Li. Yi Xian frowned. Heaven's sanctum? Mei Li shook her head. No. Yi Xian was a little puzzled. Then you are? Mei Li looked at Yi Xian, passing by. Yi Xian narrowed his eyes. Is there something I can help you with? Mei Li's gaze fell onto the profound green sword in Yi Xian's hand before she said, the Spirit Beast clan has already sent a 14th phase expert. Do you know about this? A 14th phase master. Yi Xian looked at Mei Li. You are from Heaven's sanctum. If I'm not wrong, you should be the ancestor that Heaven's sanctum just summoned. Mei Li pinched a strand of hair with 2 fingers and slowly pulled it down. She smiled and said, what a smart human. Yi Xian slowly tightened his grip on the green profound sword. Meanwhile, Mei Li suddenly said, don't worry, I'm not interested in you. Yi Xian frowned. What do you mean? Mei Li glanced at the green profound sword in Yi Xian's hand. I'm interested in this sword. Yi Xian flew into a rage. I'm not as good as a sword. Mei Li blinked. Without this sword, would you be Mu Tian's opponent? Yi Xian was silent. Without the green profound sword, he might not be able to beat Mu Tian. Because the reason he could beat Mu Tian was because of the green profound sword's ability to ignore space and time. Mei Li still wanted to say something, but Yi Xian suddenly smiled and said, may I ask what phase Mu Tian is? And what phase am I? Mei Li was silent. Yi Xian then said, Miss, if you're interested in my sword, then you need to be clear about one thing. That is, I'm not interested in you, do you understand? Mei Li looked at Yi Xian and said with a smile, are you interested in me? Yi Xian shook his head. I, Yi Xian, am not interested in women. Mei Li narrowed her eyes. Human, you should learn to respect me. Yi Xian smiled and said, you were the one who didn't respect me first. Saying this, he turned around and left. Mei Li suddenly said, Spirit Beast Race. Yi Xian suddenly smiled and said, do you think I'm afraid of the Spirit Beast Race? Mei Li looked at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. She didn't choose to directly attack for two reasons. The first was because of the sword in Yi Xian's hand, and the second was because of Yi Xian's identity. Yi Xian then said, Miss, let's make a deal. Are you interested? Mei Li smiled and asked, what deal? Yi Xian said, pardon me for asking, but what is Mrs. current strength? Mei Li's lips curled up. Killing a 14th phase expert shouldn't be a problem. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, how big is the gap between me and a 14th phase expert? Mei Li said, if you don't use the sword in your hand, a 13th phase expert can easily kill you. If you use that sword. I can't say. Yi Xian looked at Mei Li, try it? Mei Li nodded, all right. As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly disappeared on the spot. Yi Xian's pupils shrank. He was just about to use his invincible sword domain, bang. As a muffled sound rang out, Yi Xian retreated hundreds of thousands of feet away. As soon as he stopped, two fingers touched his forehead. Mei Li looked at Yi Xian. After a moment, she withdrew her fingers and smiled, this gap seems a bit big. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, why are you so fast? Mei Li said, space-time folding. Yi Xian frowned slightly, space-time folding? Mei Li nodded, at our level, we can use space-time folding. As she spoke, she retreated thousands of meters away and waved her right hand. In an instant, the space where she and Yi Xian were directly folded. At the same time, she appeared in front of Yi Xian. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian's expression became serious. Mei Li said, space-time folding. From a certain perspective, this is currently the fastest known speed. Yi Xian was silent. At this moment, he was thinking that if his flying sword could be transported in this way. Mei Li smiled, you seem to be interested. Yi Xian looked at Mei Li, let's make a deal. Are you interested? Mei Li nodded, tell me about it. Yi Xian said, I can let you study my sword. In exchange, you have to follow me for 3 months. During this period, you have to protect me. Not only that, you have to teach me. Mei Li smiled, why? Yi Xian asked, how many layers of spacetime can your body enter? Mei Li said, the 6th layer. Yi Xian opened his palm and the green profound sword entered the 7th layer of spacetime. Seeing this scene, the smile on Mei Li's face gradually disappeared. After a moment, she looked at Yi Xian, the limit of your sword is the 7th layer of spacetime? Yi Xian smiled, take a guess? Mei Li took a deep look at the green profound sword in Yi Xian's hand, the deal you mentioned is a deal. With that, she opened her palm and asked for the sword. However, Yi Xian kept the green profound sword, teach me how to fold spacetime first. Mei Li looked at Yi Xian and did not say anything. Yi Xian smiled, is there a problem? Mei Li smiled, no problem. Yi Xian nodded, how should I address you, miss? Mei Li said, Mei Li. Yi Xian said, Miss Mei Li, let's enter Shao Ta and slowly study it. With that, he directly brought Mei Li into Shao Ta. After entering Shao Ta, Mei Li's face suddenly became solemn, the spacetime in your tower. With that, she looked at Yi Xian, 10 years in this world is 1 day outside. Yi Xian looked at Mei Li and was slightly shocked. This woman actually saw through it at a glance. Mei Li looked deeply at Yi Xian, young Master Yi, you are not simple. You know, this world is independent of the spacetime outside. Not only that, the other party also carried out a wonderful reversal of the spacetime in this tower. This is not the most terrifying thing. The most terrifying thing is that the other party made this world have a certain connection with the outside world. With that, She was silent for a long time, then said, "The space-time path contained within it has already exceeded my understanding. I can't explain it completely." Yi Xian smiled, "It's just a small matter. Don't make a fuss about it." Mei Li frowned slightly. "A small matter? Young Master Yi, do you know what this means? Even the illusion race, which has reached a level 6 civilization, can't do this." Illusion race. Yi Xian blinked. "You know about the illusion race?" Mei Li looked at Yi Xian. "You know about the illusion race too?" Yi Xian said with a straight face, "Of course." Mei Li stared at Yi Xian. "I wonder what is the relationship between young Master Yi and the illusion race." Yi Xian blinked, then said, "This. Do you really want to know?" Mei Li nodded. "I'm curious." Yi Xian smiled. "To be honest, the illusion race is a subsidiary race of my Yang family. If you want to be arrogant, you should brag as much as you can. You don't have to pay taxes anyway." Hearing Yi Xian's words, Mei Li's mouth twitched. "Young Master Yi, are you sure?" Yi Xian nodded, "Very sure." Mei Li was silent. "Do you know how terrifying the illusion race is?" Yi Xian smiled. "Is it very terrifying?" Mei Li smiled. "As far as I know, within the illusion race, they have 136 subsidiary races, and the lowest among them is a level 5 civilization. Not only that, but the illusion race also controls 19 super-universes. The scope of their influence is unimaginable. They are also known as the number 1 race in the universe." "Young Master Yi, you said that they are a subsidiary race of your Yang family?" Yi Xian was a little embarrassed. Damn, wasn't this bragging a little too much? However, it was hard to back down now, so he could only continue bragging. Yi Xian laughed. "Miss Mei Li, do you know how powerful my Yang family is?" Mei Li looked at Yi Xian. "Yang family? Forgive me for being blunt, but I've never heard of it." Yi Xian's face darkened. This dad was too low-key. Mei Li smiled and said, "Young Master Yi, can you tell me more about this Yang clan?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "I am the Yang clan's patriarch." "Oh no, my father is the patriarch. I am the Yang clan's young patriarch." "Do you know my father?" "A man who likes to wear green robes." Mei Li shook her head. "Never heard of it." Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "Miss Mei Li's level is too low." "Mei Li," Yi Xian continued, "in any case, as long as I don't die, my Yang clan will be invincible." "Oh, that's not right. As long as my father doesn't die, my Yang clan will be invincible. If you don't agree, feel free to find my father." The azure-robed man, Xiao Ta, suddenly said, "Young master, you're really awesome. You can brag all you want, but if there's a problem, I'll take responsibility. P.S. Let me ask everyone a question. How many chapters do you think an author needs for the readers to be willing to vote for them?" Chapter 1881. Mei Li glanced at Yi Xian and did not speak. She naturally did not believe Yi Xian's words. This human did not look like an honest person. However, she did not say anything else. Yi Xian did not say anything else and began to ask Mei Li about spacetime. Spacetime folding. If he could fold spacetime, coupled with his azure sword, who could stop him? In the following period of time, Yi Xian learned how to fold spacetime from Mei Li every day. It was not difficult to fold spacetime. When he folded the first spacetime, he did it very easily. However, when he folded the second spacetime, it was a little difficult. However, he still managed to do it in 3 days. When he folded the third spacetime, the difficulty increased by at least 10 times. In Mei Li's words, spacetime had density. The higher it was, the thicker the spacetime was. The thicker the spacetime was, the harder it was to fold. What was spacetime density? In order to figure this out, Yi Xian spent nearly a month. Everything had density. Spacetime density was just one of them. Not long after, Yi Xian was able to fold the third spacetime. After that, he began to familiarize himself with the fourth spacetime. While Yi Xian was practicing the fourth spacetime, Mei Li was studying his azure sword. Looking at the azure sword in her hand, Mei Li fell into deep thought. The profoundness of this sword had completely exceeded her understanding, especially the spacetime path. It was so profound that even Xiao Ta could not compare to it. Who was the one who created this? At this moment, she no longer had any desire for revenge. Even if the person behind this human was not strong enough to make the illusion clan submit, he was not someone that Heaven's sanctum could provoke. Her current goal was to slowly study the azure sword. It would be best if she could fully understand it. She believed that if she could fully understand it, she would be able to reach another level. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly walked in front of Mei Li. "Miss Mei Li, I can already fold the fourth spacetime. But this fifth spacetime." Mei Li put down the azure sword and smiled. "It's difficult, right?" Yi Xian nodded. "I realize that it's impossible to fold." Mei Li looked at Yi Xian. "Do you know why the fifth spacetime is so difficult?" Yi Xian shook his head. "I don't know." Mei Li said, "The fifth layer of time and space supports the 10,000 dimensional time and space. It is made up of countless layers of time and space. Its density is about 100 times that of the fourth layer of time and space. Do you think it's easy for you to fold spacetime with such density?" Yi Xian quickly asked, "Is there any other way?" After pondering for a moment, Mei Li said, "There are two methods. The first is to take it slow. After cultivating for 1,000 years, you should be able to do it." 1,000 years. Yi Xian's expression froze. In other words, it would take a few months. On second thought, it didn't seem to be too long. After all, he was in Xiao Ta's world. Mei Li continued, "There's another way, and that's to fuse with the fifth layer of spacetime." Yi Xian was stunned and said, "Fuse with the fifth layer of spacetime?" Mei Li nodded. "This is more difficult, but there are many benefits. If you can fuse with the fifth layer of spacetime, not only can you fold spacetime, but you can also reverse spacetime and distort spacetime." Yi Xian blinked. "Why didn't you say so earlier?" Mei Li frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm and the azure sword appeared in his hand. The next moment, he directly escaped into the fifth layer of spacetime. At this moment, he had fused with the fifth layer of spacetime. Seeing this scene, Mei Li's expression instantly became solemn. "You," as she spoke, she seemed to have thought of something and looked at the azure sword in Yi Xian's hand. "It's your sword." Yi Xian smiled. "Yes." Mei Li stared at Yi Xian. "This sword can actually allow you to fuse with spacetime." Yi Xian nodded and seemed to have thought of something. He asked, "Miss Mei Li, under normal circumstances, how long does it take to fuse with the fifth layer of spacetime?" Mei Li said in a low voice, "At least 100,000 years." Yi Xian was stunned. 100,000 years? Are you serious? Mei Li was a little annoyed. "Do you think it's easy to fuse with spacetime?" Yi Xian smiled awkwardly. "I think it's quite easy." Mei Li said angrily, "That's because you have this sword. If you were to cultivate normally, it would be absolutely impossible without tens of thousands of years." Yi Xian looked at the azure sword in his hand and smiled. "Actually, I also want to cultivate normally, but my strength doesn't allow it." Mei Li suddenly closed her eyes and placed her right hand on her chest. Yi Xian hurriedly asked, "Mei Li, what's wrong?" Mei Li glanced at Yi Xian. "Chest pain." Yi Xian subconsciously said, "Do you want me to help you rub it?" After saying that, he regretted it. Damn it. What was he thinking? Mei Li smiled faintly. "Help me rub it?" Yi Xian laughed. "Miss Mei Li, I'm just joking. I, Yi Xian, have never been interested in women. Let's get down to business. Miss Mei Li, now that I have fused with the fifth layer of spacetime, what should I do next?" Mei Li glanced at Yi Xian and said lightly, "It's very simple. Feel them and truly understand their nature. Since you can fuse with them, it's not difficult to do so. Yi Xian nodded and tried. Soon, a smile appeared on his face. Just like what Mei Li said, it was really not difficult. Of course, the premise was that he could fuse with the fifth layer of spacetime. Before long, Yi Xian started trying to fold the fifth layer of spacetime. Mei Li took a deep look at Yi Xian, and she was extremely shocked. She realized that she had underestimated the green profound sword. Yi Xian actually relied on this sword to fuse with the fifth layer of spacetime. Exactly how terrifying is this sword? There was no answer. Because the knowledge of spacetime contained in this sword had exceeded her current understanding. Before long, Yi Xian was able to fold the fifth layer of spacetime, but he didn't continue to fold the sixth layer of spacetime. He had to first fuse the Tao of spacetime folding with the flying sword. Yi Xian opened his palm, and the green profound sword silently appeared 3 kilometers away. A smile appeared on the corners of Yi Xian's mouth when he saw this. It's feasible. This spacetime folding can really be fused with the flying sword. Mei Li glanced at Yi Xian, and a wisp of seriousness appeared in her eyes. After Yi Xian's flying sword utilized spacetime folding, its speed could only be described as terrifying. It could be said that the sword just now was enough to instantly kill some Phase 13 experts. It was an instant kill. Moreover, Yi Xian's flying sword had another terrifying aspect, and that was the sword. This green profound sword wasn't an ordinary sword, and there was probably nothing in this world that could stop it. After this sword passed, there was no other way other than using spacetime folding to escape. No one dared to go head-on against Yi Xian's sword. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly became illusory, and the next moment, he had already entered the sixth layer of spacetime. Seeing this, Mei Li looked at Yi Xian as if she was looking at a monster, and her voice trembled as she said, You can even enter the sixth layer of spacetime? Yi Xian smiled and said, That's right. Why, is it very difficult to enter the sixth layer of spacetime? Mei Li said angrily, Are you talking like a human? Do you know how long it took me to enter the sixth layer of spacetime? A whole 160,000 years. 160,000 years. Do you know how I spent those 160,000 years? Yi Xian frowned slightly. 160,000 years. Isn't that too exaggerated? Mei Li was so angry that her eyes looked like they were about to spit fire. Try not using this sword. Big brother, I beg you, don't try using this sword. Yi Xian said seriously, This sword was made for me by my sister, you can also get your sister to make one for you. Mei Li slowly closed her eyes, and she clenched her fists, and her chest heaved up and down. She couldn't help but want to hit someone. Yi Xian laughed, Miss Mei Li, don't be angry, I have no ill intentions. I know that cultivation is not easy, and using this sword to enter the sixth layer of spacetime is equivalent to taking a shortcut. I am not complacent because of this, because I know that it is this sword that brought me this, if not for this sword. Speaking up to this point, he thought for a moment, and then said, If not for this sword, I think I can get Qing, to make another one for me. The problem is that Yi is not very big. Pfft. Mei Li was so angry that she directly spat out a mouthful of blood. This is too damn infuriating. Yi Xian still wanted to say something, but Mei Li suddenly said angrily, You shut up. You shut up. If you dare to speak, I will kill you. After saying that, she turned around and left. She really didn't want to listen to Yi Xian anymore. This human's words could anger her to death. Seeing Mei Li leave, Yi Xian was a little speechless. He did not dwell on the problem of whether the sword was a sword or not, but began to fuse with the sixth layer of spacetime. With the help of the Cyan Profound Sword, it was not difficult to fuse with the sixth layer of spacetime. Not long after, he fused with the sixth layer of spacetime, and then began to fold the sixth layer of spacetime. This time, it was not as simple as the last time, because the density of the sixth layer of spacetime was at least 100 times thicker than the fifth layer of spacetime. It was very, very difficult to fold the sixth layer of spacetime. Yi Xian was also a little troubled. However, he did not give up and continued to try. Time passed bit by bit. More than 10 years later, Mei Li, who was studying the Cyan Profound Sword, suddenly frowned. In the next moment, she looked up. They're here. Not far from Mei Li, Yi Xian was a little puzzled. What's here? Mei Li looked at Yi Xian, Spirit Beast Clan's experts. Yi Xian frowned. He left Xiao Ta. Just as he left Xiao Ta, the black-robed man and a group of mysterious experts appeared in front of him. The black-robed man was about to speak, but Yi Xian suddenly opened his palm. In the next moment, the black-robed man's head flew out before he could even react. At the same time, the Cyan Profound Sword directly absorbed the black-robed man's soul. All the Spirit Beast Clan's experts were stunned. Yi Xian glanced at the Spirit Beast Clan's experts. Call your ancestors. I am invincible, do as you wish. Mei Li, all the Spirit Beast Clan's experts. Chapter 1882. Invincible? At will? Mei Li had a strange expression on her face. Has this human gone mad? In the boundless universe, who would dare to call themselves invincible? Invincible? Right at this moment, a voice suddenly resounded from the side. Yi Xian turned around and looked over. The space nearby had suddenly become illusory, and it wasn't long before a man walked out. The man had a robust figure and his face was covered in scales. At first glance, he seemed extremely ferocious. A 14th rank expert. The man smiled and said, Human, say, you. The sword in Yi Xian's hand suddenly vanished. In the next moment, the man's pupils constricted, and he was just about to flee. However, he was still a bit too slow, and the sword pierced through his forehead. Hiss! A fountain of blood sprayed out. The man stared fixedly at Yi Xian. At this moment, his soul had been locked onto by Yi Xian's sword. The man gazed at Yi Xian. You. Spatial folding. You're only at the 10th rank, how could you? Right at this moment, Yi Xian issued a command in his heart, and the Azure Profound Sword directly absorbed the man's soul. The expressions of the Spirit Beast experts instantly changed when they witnessed this scene. This human instantly killed a 14th rank expert. Mei Li's expression was slightly serious as well. The growth of Yi Xian's strength was slightly terrifying. How long had it been? No. Mei Li suddenly recalled that even though only a few days had passed in the outside world, it had been a few dozen years in Xiao Ta's body. However, even then, the speed at which Yi Xian improved was too terrifying. Sword. Mei Li's gaze descended onto the Azure Profound Sword in Yi Xian's hand. This sword had directly increased Yi Xian's strength by over a dozen levels. In the distance, after Yi Xian killed the 14th rank expert, he didn't stop. He opened his palm, and in an instant, the heads of all the Spirit Beast experts flew into the air. Instant kill. With his current flying sword, even a 14th rank expert could not block it, let alone these experts below the 14th rank. After the Qingxian sword absorbed the souls of the Spirit Beast clan's powerhouses, Yi Xian put away the Qingxian sword. At this moment, the horizon in front of him suddenly split open and a shadow quietly appeared. Yi Xian frowned. Again? The phantom gradually solidified, and it didn't take long for a middle-aged man to appear in front of Yi Xian. The middle-aged man wore a black robe and had a horn growing out of his head. A 15th stage master. This person was the current patriarch of the Spirit Beast clan, Shou Gu. Shou Gu looked at Yi Xian. We underestimated you. Yi Xian smiled and said, as far as I know, I have no enmity with the spirit beasts. I wonder if you, Shou Gu suddenly interrupted Yi Xian's words. There was no enmity between us before, but isn't there enmity now? Yi Xian looked at Shou Gu and said with a smile, what you said makes sense. Shou Gu stared at Yi Xian. Do you dare to come to my spirit beast clan? Yi Xian shook his head. I don't dare. After he finished speaking, he turned around and left. He didn't make a move because the person in front of him was only a phantom, not the real body. Shou Gu stared at the distant Yi Xian. His gaze was like a blade, incomparably cold. On the other side, Yi Xian directly returned to Xiao Ta. Take the initiative to go to the Spirit Beast clan? He wasn't an idiot. Now that he had the strength to go to the Spirit Beast clan and fight against the entire Spirit Beast clan. Wasn't that just courting death? Wouldn't it be better for him to cultivate in Xiao Ta and then kill his way over? Facing this kind of 15th stage expert, he didn't have any confidence. Not to mention 15th stage, even if it was 14th stage, if the other party was on guard, it would be difficult for him to instantly kill them. When he instantly killed that 14th stage expert, it was actually because he caught the other party off guard. And this Spirit Beast clan clearly had a 15th stage expert. Moreover, it was possible that there was more than one. The most important thing was that this kind of power had an ancestor or something. As they fought, they had to summon their ancestor. What a pain in the ass. This time, he had to make thorough preparations before killing his way over to the Spirit Beast clan. Yi Xian continued to fold the 6th layer of spacetime. If he could fold the 6th layer of spacetime, then he would have the ability to kill a 15th stage expert. During this time, Mei Li was constantly guiding Yi Xian. Therefore, the progress was quite smooth. However, the Spirit Beast clan clearly didn't want to give him time. Yi Xian, who was cultivating, suddenly raised his head. He frowned, so fast. At the side, Mei Li smiled and said, "You're already enough to attract the attention of the Spirit Beast clan. Right now, they don't just want your sword, they want to get rid of you even more." Yi Xian didn't say anything. He left Xiao Ta. As soon as he left Xiao Ta, the Spirit Beast clan's patriarch, Shou Gu, appeared in front of him. Shou Gu didn't look at Yi Xian. Instead, he looked at Mei Li, who was by Yi Xian's side. "Heaven's Abode's Lord, are you going to help this human?" Mei Li glanced at Yi Xian, and then she smiled and said, "Yes." Shou Gu smiled. "According to what I know, this person seems to want to destroy your Heaven's Abode." Mei Li smiled lightly. "Patriarch Shou Gu, even though this sword is good, it's a hot potato. You have to think it through." Shou Gu nodded slightly. "So you're here for this sword as well?" "I understand." Mei Li glanced at Shou Gu and shook her head. "Understand my ass. You don't even know who you're facing." At this moment, Shou Gu suddenly turned his head. "Beast Desolate, I'll leave Palace Master Mei Li to you." As soon as he finished speaking, a Beastman expert suddenly walked out from the right. That Beastman expert gazed at Mei Li while a wisp of a smile arose on the corners of his mouth. "Please provide me with your guidance." As soon as he finished speaking, his figure leaped up and vanished on the spot. Mei Li glanced at Yi Xian. "Take care of yourself." As soon as she finished speaking, she vanished on the spot. In the next moment, both of them entered the 6th layer of space. Meanwhile, Shou Gu gazed at Yi Xian. "Do you have anyone else?" Yi Xian shook his head. "No." Shou Gu stared at Yi Xian. "That shouldn't be the case. A genius like you doesn't have anyone backing you?" "I don't believe it." Yi Xian smiled. "Cut the crap. Do you want a one-on-one fight or a group fight?" Shou Gu gazed at Yi Xian. "One-on-one." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly vanished. Spacetime folding. Moreover, it was the 6th layer of spacetime folding. At the instant that Shou Gu vanished, Yi Xian's expression instantly changed, and he immediately utilized the invincible sword domain. In terms of speed, he was definitely inferior to Shou Gu, so he could only choose to defend. Bang! As soon as Yi Xian utilized the invincible sword domain, a powerful force swept over, and his face instantly turned pale. Meanwhile, the azure sword in Yi Xian's hand suddenly vanished. Hiss! As the sound of something tearing resounded, Shou Gu retreated explosively by 300 m. Shou Gu glanced at his right hand. and there was a deep scar on it. Shou-gu raised his head to look at Yi Xian, space-time folding. You're only at the 10th level, so how can you? Right at this moment, Yi Xian's sword suddenly vanished once more, and Shou-gu's body suddenly became illusory. Hiss! The azure sword slashed through the air. In the distance, Yi Xian's pupils suddenly constricted, and he immediately utilized the core sword domain. An expanse of sword light drowned him because Shou-gu had directly folded spacetime and arrived in front of him. Moreover, he'd even smashed his fist towards Yi Xian. Bang! Countless rays of sword light shattered, and Yi Xian retreated explosively by over 10 kilometers. Meanwhile, Shou-gu suddenly took a step forward, and the expanse of spacetime where Yi Xian resided was instantly transformed into an abyss. A spacetime abyss. Merely a single move had blasted Yi Xian into a spacetime abyss. However, to Shou-gu's disbelief, Yi Xian, who just entered the spacetime abyss, had directly returned to the real world. He's out? Shou-gu was slightly stunned. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of Shou-gu, and he suddenly drew his sword and slashed. Draw the sword to decide life and death. Presently, the speed of his flying sword wasn't sufficient to kill Shou-gu. Since speed couldn't kill Shou-gu, then he could only choose strength. As Yi Xian's sword slashed down, the expanse of spacetime where Shou-gu resided was instantly obliterated, and even the 5th layer of spacetime was obliterated. Shou-gu's face was emotionless as he immediately smashed his fist forward. Head on. A ray of sword light was obliterated by Shou-gu's fist. At the same time, Yi Xian instantly retreated explosively by 30 kilometers. His strength had been suppressed. After Yi Xian stopped moving, he wiped off the blood on the corners of his mouth, and then his eyes gradually turned blood red. Bloodline energy. A wisp of disdain arose on the corners of Shou-gu's mouth. You actually dared to utilize the strength of your bloodline in front of me. Could it be that you don't know that my Beast Spirit clan's bloodline is ranked at the 5th position in the world? As soon as he finished speaking, he took a step forward, and a strand of bloodline pressure swept directly towards Yi Xian. In the distance, Yi Xian suddenly clenched his fists tightly, and then a strand of formidable bloodline pressure surged out from within him like tidewater. It was a competition of bloodlines. However, Shou-gu's bloodline pressure had just come into contact with Yi Xian's bloodline pressure when it was instantly dispersed. Shou-gu's face was filled with disbelief when he witnessed this scene. This. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly charged over to him, and then he suddenly drew his sword and slashed. A sword howl resounded as a ray of blood-red light slashed down. A wisp of ferocity flashed through Shou-gu's eyes, and then he suddenly stomped his right foot on the ground and smashed his fist forward. A single punch. Rumble. An expanse of blood-red light was blasted apart, and then Yi Xian's figure was blasted flying. However, Shou-gu suddenly charged forward and stomped his foot forward. Bang! The space in the surroundings collapsed. Yi Xian hurriedly utilized the sword domain. However, even the sword domain wasn't able to resist the force of Shou-gu's kick. Rumble. The sword domain was destroyed, and then Yi Xian was instantly blasted 30 kilometers away. He just stopped when the green profound sword in his hands suddenly vanished. Shou-gu's eyes narrowed slightly as he raised his arm horizontally to block the attack. Bang! The green profound sword was blasted flying. However, Shou-gu's right arm was directly split apart, and he was pushed 300 m back. After he stopped, Shou-gu glanced at the green profound sword in front of Yi Xian, and he spoke with slight excitement, "What a good sword." Yi Xian lightly waved the green profound sword in his hand, and a wisp of blood slowly seeped out from the corner of his mouth. He couldn't defeat him. Facing this kind of 15th phase super expert, he still couldn't beat, especially this kind of 15th phase expert who also had a powerful physical body. At this moment, an old man in a long robe appeared in front of Shou-gu. The old man glanced at Yi Xian in the distance and said, "Patriarch, this person isn't simple." Behind him, Shogu laughed savagely. It doesn't matter. No matter how strong the person behind him is, how strong can he be? What is the human race? A piece of trash that can't even be considered a rank 2 civilization. P.S. Every time more people vote and reward, I get a little carried away. Everyone, please don't vote and reward. Let me calm down. My income has plummeted, so I'll work hard. Chapter 1883. The Human Race? Shogu really looked down on the human race. After all, the human race was not even a level 2 civilization, while the spirit beast race was a level 5 civilization. Next to Shogu, the old man in a long robe said in a deep voice, "The human race is indeed weak, but the sword in this person's hand is extraordinary." If the person who made this sword is a human, Shogu immediately shook his head. Absolutely impossible. The spacetime Tao contained in this sword is even above the spacetime spirit seal. How could a mere human race create such a divine sword? This human must have obtained this sword by luck. Saying that, he looked at Yi Xian. Everything will be known after I capture this person. As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly grasped at Yi Xian in the distance with his right hand. Boom! In an instant, the spacetime where Yi Xian was in suddenly became a cage. 6 spacetime cages. Obviously, he wanted to capture Yi Xian alive. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly turned into a sword light and disappeared. He just disappeared. Seeing this, Shogu was stunned. He ran away. This human ran away from his spacetime cage. When he came back to his senses, Yi Xian had completely disappeared. Shogu's face instantly became extremely gloomy. I was careless. Saying that, he turned his head and looked to the side. Search for this person with all your strength. Understood. Behind Shogu, countless spirit beast experts chased into the distance. Shogu seemed to think of something. He suddenly turned his head and looked to the side. There, Meili, who was fighting with the spirit beast experts, had stopped. Shogu looked at Meili. Palace Master Meili, your doppelganger has such strength. This proves that your original body has reached level 15. An expert like you should not be stupid. It is not wise for you to help a human and become enemies with the spirit beast race. Meili smiled and said, Shogu, let's wait and see. Saying that, her body gradually became illusory. She was going to disappear. She was originally a doppelganger. It was not easy for her to be able to drag on with a super expert until now. The long-robed elder beside Shogu said in a deep voice, I feel that this matter is not simple. Since Palace Master Meili is helping Yi Xian, I'm afraid. Shogu suddenly said, she's just like us. She wants Yi Xian's sword. The long-robed old man still wanted to say something, but Shogu spoke again. Elder Shou Yen seems to be very afraid of this human. The old man called Shou Yen spoke in a deep voice, I just feel that this human isn't simple. We can't underestimate him. Shogu glanced at Shou Yen and said with a smile, I know he's not simple, but does our spirit beast clan have a way out now? No. Since we've already become enemies, then we should naturally exterminate them and not leave any future troubles. With that, he turned around and left. The long-robed old man sighed softly. His intuition told him that this human was not normal. If he wasn't careful, the spirit beasts would face a great disaster. In this vast universe, although the spirit beast race was a level 5 civilization, there were many other level 5 civilizations. There were even the legendary level 6 civilizations. The stronger they were, the more careful they had to be. The slightest bit of carelessness could consign them to eternal damnation. Shou Yen sighed softly, turned around, and left. On the other side, Yi Xian directly arrived at the 7th layer of spacetime. After he entered the 7th layer of spacetime, it was absolutely impossible for Shogu and the other experts to find him. After all, Shogu was only a level 15 expert. At most, he could only enter the 6th layer of spacetime. The seventh layer of spacetime was completely dark. Strictly speaking, the seventh layer of spacetime was formed by a spacetime black hole. The pressure here was more than 100 times stronger than the pressure in the sixth layer of spacetime. If it wasn't for the profound azure sword, he wouldn't have dared to enter. With his current strength, he was simply no different from an ant here. Not to mention him, even if the desolate antiquity came here, he would probably be wiped out in an instant. It could be said that the sixth layer of spacetime and the seventh layer of spacetime were worlds apart. This made Yi Xian's mood somewhat solemn. He could still face a level 15 expert. However, if he encountered an expert who could enter the seventh layer of spacetime, he definitely wouldn't be able to fight back. After a moment, Yi Xian withdrew his thoughts and returned to Xiao Ta's body. Then, he entered the sixth layer of spacetime and continued to fold the sixth layer of spacetime. Only by folding the sixth layer of spacetime would he have a chance to kill a level 15 expert. Otherwise, he would be crushed by his opponent in terms of speed. As for the seventh layer of spacetime, he didn't even think about it. It was definitely not something he could touch now. He had to admit that he was in a bit of a hurry. This was because he knew that if his opponent couldn't find him, he would definitely think of other ways. For example, he would look for the spirit of 9 and use them or even the human race to threaten him. He had already figured out these enemies' tricks. Therefore, he had to race against time. Otherwise, he might fall into a passive position. Outside, somewhere in the starry sky, Shou sat cross-legged in the starry sky. Behind him stood more than a dozen super experts of the Spirit Beast clan. He kept recalling the battle with Yi Xian in his mind. Finally, he came to a conclusion. The reason why Yi Xian was able to fight with him for so long was because of that sword. If not for that sword, his spacetime suppression would have been enough to kill Yi Xian. However, because of that sword, his spacetime suppression, spacetime cage, and spacetime abyss were all ineffective against Yi Xian. Thinking of this, Shou expression gradually turned grave. At this moment, he realized that the sword was even more terrifying than he had imagined. How did that human obtain this sword? Shou's brows knitted together deeply. However, the doubt in his eyes soon turned into excitement. If that sword was in his hands, his battle prowess would increase by at least several times. Moreover, he might even be able to use that sword to reach a higher level. At that time, he would be able to bring the otherworldly demonic race to a new height, far surpassing their ancestors. Thinking of this, Shou immediately stood up. He turned to the side and asked, "Is there any news of that Yi Xian?" Shou Yan shook his head. That person seems to have evaporated into thin air. There's no news of him at all. Shou frowned slightly. You can't find him? Shou Yan nodded. I can't find him. Shou fell silent for a moment before he said, according to what I know, that person seems to have a close relationship with the otherworldly demonic race. Shou Yan glanced at Shou. Patriarch, what do you mean? Shou said, to the otherworldly demonic race. After saying this, he vanished on the spot. It didn't take long for Shou to arrive at the otherworldly spirit world with a group of spirit beast experts. In the sky above the otherworldly spirit world, the otherworldly spirit king glanced at Shou and the others, and then he said, King Shou, I wonder where. Shou interrupted the otherworldly spirit king. Where is that Yi Xian? The otherworldly spirit king shook his head. I don't know. Shou looked at the otherworldly spirit king. You don't know? The otherworldly spirit king said in a deep voice, Your Excellency, our otherworldly spirit race really doesn't know where young Master Yi is. Although young Master Yi was on good terms with our otherworldly spirit race, when he left, our otherworldly spirit race, Shou suddenly interrupted the otherworldly spirit king. I don't want to listen to such nonsense. Today, if Yi Xian doesn't appear, our beast spirit race will trample the otherworldly demonic race. The otherworldly spirit king's face turned slightly unsightly when he heard this. King Shou, our otherworldly spirit race really doesn't know where young Master Yi is. You have to be reasonable. Reasonable? A wisp of a cold smile appeared on the corners of Shogu's mouth. Otherworldly Spirit King, you're truly pitiful. Do you know what's the most useless thing in this world? It's the reason you spoke of earlier. In this world, only one's fist matters. Only the party with the bigger fist is reasonable. You actually want to reason with me? How laughable. I'll tell you the truth as well. I know that your otherworldly spirit race doesn't know where Yi Xian is, and I intend to use the lives of your otherworldly spirit race to force Yi Xian out. The faces of the otherworldly Spirit King and the other experts turned extremely unsightly when they heard this. This is clearly bullying you. Thinking so, the otherworldly Spirit King turned to King Shogu and laughed heartily. King Shogu, our otherworldly spirit race actually knows where young Master Yi is. However, I refuse to tell you. King Shogu narrowed his eyes. Kill. Leave none alive. As soon as he finished speaking, the experts of the beast spirit race behind him charged forward. Below, the otherworldly Spirit King suddenly roared furiously, all clansmen, heed my command. Fight to the death. Fight to the death. As he spoke, he charged forward. Behind him, countless experts of the otherworldly spirit race also charged forward. In the sky, the Beast Gu King was just about to attack. Right at this moment, his eyes suddenly narrowed, and then he turned around. A ray of light suddenly flashed not too far away, and then the head of a spirit beast expert flew into the air in the next moment. The sword ray dissipated, and Yi Xian appeared before everyone. Seeing Yi Xian appear, the otherworldly Spirit King immediately heaved a sigh of relief. If young Master Yi still didn't appear, the otherworldly demonic race would probably be wiped out today. Because at present, the otherworldly demonic race was no match for the beast spirit race. Seeing Yi Xian, a smile appeared on the King Shogu's lips. Yi Xian, you sure are loyal to your friends. You really showed up. Yi Xian glanced at the otherworldly Spirit King by the side. Senior Spirit King, I'm sorry to have caused you trouble. The otherworldly Spirit King hurriedly shook his head. No, no. Young Master Yi, there's no need to stand on ceremony. I only hate the fact that our otherworldly demonic race is too weak to help young Master Yi. Sigh. Yi Xian smiled and said, this is my own matter. How can I trouble you? As he spoke, he looked at the King Shogu and waved the azure profound sword in his hand. Then, he said, you want this sword? The King Shogu gazed at Yi Xian. Yi Xian, you should be aware that your strength isn't worthy of this sword. Moreover, as far as I know, you're a smart person. You should be aware that it isn't a good thing for you to possess such a divine sword with your strength and status. If you're smart, then hand over the sword. If you do, then I can spare your life. Yi Xian spoke in a low voice. Really? The King Shogu stared at Yi Xian. Really? Yi Xian fell silent for a moment before he said, give me 3 days to consider. 3 days. The King Shogu frowned. He was about to speak when Shou Yan spoke abruptly. Don't agree to his request. He's trying to buy time. The King Shogu gazed at Yi Xian. No. Yi Xian glanced at Shou Yan and said, King Shogu, rumor has it that you're invincible. I'd like to experience it for myself. Obviously, he wanted to fight one-on-one. The corners of Beast Gu's mouth curled into a disdainful smile. He was just about to speak when Shou Yan, who was beside him, suddenly said, don't agree with him. Patriarch, let's attack together. He has no chance at all. Yi Xian was speechless. Chapter 1884. Attack together? Yi Xian glanced at Shou Yan. Motherfucker. This geezer is really bad. Meanwhile, Shogu suddenly said, why do this?" As he spoke, he walked towards Yi Xian. "Yi Xian, since you want to fight me in single combat, then I'll fulfill your wish." Shou Yan sighed softly when he heard Shou Gu. Yi Xian gazed at Shou Gu and smiled, as expected of the king of a clan. "You're bold. I, Yi Xian, admire you." Shou Gu smiled, "Cut the crap. Let's fight." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly took a step forward, and then he smashed his fist forward. Bang! A fist swept through the surroundings, and the formidable force contained within it caused space to be obliterated everywhere it passed. Physical strength. Besides being skilled in the spacetime Dao, Shou Gu's physical strength was extremely terrifying as well. Yi Xian didn't think too much about it. He opened his palm, and then the green profound sword flew out. Bang! A ray of light slashed onto the fist, and it was instantly slashed into pieces. Meanwhile, Shou Gu suddenly appeared above Yi Xian, and then he suddenly stomped his foot down. Rumble. The space around Yi Xian instantly collapsed. Yi Xian directly utilized the invincible sword domain, and it forcefully protected him. However, Shou Gu smashed his fist down once more. Rumble. The invincible sword domain collapsed, and then Yi Xian was instantly blasted 3 kilometers away. Moreover, he'd entered the 6th level of the spatial abyss when his figure stopped moving. After Yi Xian entered the 6th level of the spatial abyss, Shou Gu didn't attack again, and he just watched. Meanwhile, Yi Xian's figure became ethereal, and he returned to reality in the next moment. Shou Gu's eyes narrowed when he witnessed this scene, and they were filled with excitement. The sword. Yi Xian's sword was able to bring him out of the spatial abyss. Needless to say, at this moment, Shou Gu was both excited and shocked. He was excited because if this sword was in his hands, then the might it could display was simply unimaginable. He was shocked because this sword was actually so terrifying and was capable of bringing a living being out from a spatial abyss. This was truly terrifying. Without thinking too much, Shou Gu looked at Yi Xian and took a step forward. With this step, his entire body arrived in front of Yi Xian. At the same time, a powerful force instantly blasted towards Yi Xian. Yi Xian blocked with his sword. Boom! Yi Xian was sent flying hundreds of thousands of feet away along with his sword. When he came to a stop, a trickle of blood slowly flowed from the corner of his mouth. Shou Gu looked at Yi Xian with disdain. "Yi Xian, is this all you've got?" Yi Xian wiped off the blood on the corner of his mouth and said, "I surrender." Surrender. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was stunned. Including that beast Gu King. Shou Gu was stunned for a moment, and then he roared with laughter. Surrender? If you surrendered just now, then I might have considered it. But it's too late now. Right at this moment, the sword in Yi Xian's hand suddenly vanished. It was a spatial fold. Moreover, it was the 6th spatial fold. This sudden and unexpected event caused Shou Gu's expression to instantly change drastically. Because it was the 6th spatial fold and coupled with the fact that he'd underestimated Yi Xian earlier, he'd never imagined that Yi Xian would actually be able to fold the 6th spatial fold. So, he could only defend passively right now. Shou Gu instinctively raised his arms in front of him to defend. Sword arrival. Bang! Everyone watched as Shou Gu's arms were chopped off, and then his body was blasted into pieces. As Shou Gu's soul retreated explosively, Yi Xian pressed his fingers together and guided lightly, and then the green profound sword flew forward. Hiss! The others hadn't even recovered from their shock when the green profound sword pierced through the center of Shou Gu's forehead. Bang! The green profound sword instantly absorbed Shou Gu's soul and didn't give him any chance. The countenances of all the beast spirit race experts instantly turned pale when they witnessed this scene. This human killed King Shou Gu. In the distance, Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. A short moment later, he opened his palm, and the green profound sword flew back into his grasp. The green profound sword trembled slightly as Little Soul said excitedly, "Young master, it's a great tonic." Yi Xian grinned, "There's still a lot." Shou Yan stared fixedly at Yi Xian, "You acted weak first, and then you took them by surprise and executed a killer move to kill them in a single strike. Human, how scheming of you." Yi Xian gazed at Shou Yan and the others, and he didn't waste his breath at all. The green profound sword in his hands suddenly flew forward. At the instant he did, Shou Yan had already appeared over 30 kilometers away. His sword pierced through the air. Yi Xian fell silent when he witnessed this scene. Just as he'd expected, it would be very difficult for him to instantly kill such an expert if they were on guard. Meanwhile, Shou Yan suddenly said, "Retreat." As soon as he finished speaking, he and the other beast spirit race experts turned around and vanished into the starry sky. Yi Xian opened his palm, and the green profound sword returned to his grasp. In the next moment, he immediately pursued them. Beast Spirit World. The Beast Spirit World was located in the spirit realm, and there were many powerful forces in the boundless spirit realm. All of them were rank 5 civilizations, and the beast spirit race was just one of them. After Shou Yan led all the beast spirit race experts back to the beast spirit race, he seized the opportunity to become the patriarch of the beast spirit race because Shou Gu had perished. Within the beast spirit race's main hall, Shou Yan immediately gathered all the beast spirit race's experts. At the same time, all the grand formations of the beast spirit race were activated, and even some elders who were in seclusion were summoned. Within the main hall, Shou Yan glanced at all the experts present, and then he said, "Immediately notify the entire spirit realm. Tell them that Yi Xian possesses a divine artifact that surpasses the 6th level of spacetime. Not only will he be able to ignore the pressure of spacetime and the abyss of spacetime, he can even enter the 7th level of spacetime." Understood. One of the beast spirit race experts retreated. Shou Yan said, "Elder Shou Qian, go personally to the barbarian spirit race and tell them that if they're willing to help our beast spirit race, then our beast spirit race is willing to submit." Submit. As soon as these words were spoken, the expressions of all the beast spirit race experts within the hall changed drastically. Elder Shou Qian said in a low voice, "Patriarch Shou Yan, Yi Xian is only one person. We." Shou Yan slowly closed his eyes. "We can't stop him." Shou Qian said in a low voice, "We can still summon the ancestor." Shou Yan glanced at Shou Qian. "The patriarch is already dead. If we summon the ancestor, then our beast spirit race won't have any trump cards left. Even if we manage to defeat Yi Xian, our beast spirit race will immediately be divided up by the other races. At that time, we won't even have the qualifications to bargain. Our beast spirit race will have the qualifications to bargain with the barbarian spirit race if we summon the ancestor. Even if we submit to the barbarian spirit race's ancestor, our beast spirit race will have the qualifications to talk to the barbarian spirit race as long as we have this card. Moreover, once we submit to the barbarian spirit race's ancestor, then we'll be able to draw trouble to them. The barbarian spirit race is a subordinate race of the illusion ancestor, so once Yi Xian goes against them, then it's equivalent to going against the illusion ancestor. If he goes against the illusion ancestor, then no matter how formidable the power behind him is, he'll still die for sure." Shou Qian hesitated for a moment when he heard this, and then he said, "Does he have a formidable power behind him?" Shou Yan said in a light voice, "How could such a person possibly grow to such an extent if he doesn't have any backing?" Shou Qian intended to say something else, but a beast spirit race expert suddenly appeared within the hall. "Patriarch, Yi Xian has arrived." Shou Yan's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he gazed at Shou Qian. "Head to the barbarian spirit race right now." Shou Qian nodded. Understood. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and vanished from within the hall. In the sky above the beast spirit world, Yi Xian stood with his sword in hand. He'd chased all the way here. He naturally wouldn't let this matter rest. Meanwhile, Shou Yan suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian, and he gazed at Yi Xian and said, "Young Master Yi, this is a misunderstanding. My beast spirit race is willing to compensate you for your losses." Yi Xian suddenly smiled and said, "A misunderstanding? What a joke." As soon as he finished speaking, he opened his palm. Shou Yan's expression instantly changed drastically, and he was just about to attack when over a dozen heads suddenly shot into the sky. Yi Xian gazed at Shou Yan and smiled. "I, Yi Xian, don't like to cause trouble, but I'll definitely annihilate anyone who dares offend me." As soon as he finished speaking, he charged forward. Hiss! An expanse of blood-red sword light flashed through the battlefield. Shou Yan's eyes narrowed slightly. "Activate the formation." As soon as he finished speaking, the space around Yi Xian warped. At the same time, a huge barrier of light enveloped the entire beast spirit world, and then countless strange talismans shot towards Yi Xian from within the barrier of light. Yi Xian's brows knit together slightly as he stood within the warped space, and then he suddenly drew his sword and slashed. Bang! Space shattered apart, and the strange talismans in the surroundings instantly vanished. Shou Yan's face instantly fell when he witnessed this scene. Yi Xian was just about to attack again when a voice suddenly resounded from afar. "Wait!" Shou Yan instantly heaved a sigh of relief when he heard this voice. "An expert from the barbarian spirit race has arrived." Yi Xian turned around and saw a middle-aged man walking over slowly from afar. He wasn't a human, but his appearance was actually 90% similar to a human. However, he was much stronger than a human. The barbarian spirit race expert sized Yi Xian up, and then he said, "Are you a human?" Yi Xian smiled, "Yes." That expert gazed at Yi Xian. "I don't care about the enmity between you and the beast spirit race, but from this moment onward, the beast spirit race has submitted to my barbarian spirit race. Now, they're a subordinate race of my barbarian spirit race. Understand?" Yi Xian nodded, "I understand." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly slashed with his sword. Hiss! The head of that expert from the barbarian spirit race flew into the air. All the experts of the beast spirit race were stunned. This human actually dared to kill an expert from the barbarian spirit race? Shou Yan instantly started laughing when he witnessed this scene. Now, enmity had been formed between the human and the barbarian spirit race. Yi Xian turned around to gaze at Shou Yan. Shou Yan spoke in a low voice, "Do you know anything about the barbarian spirit race?" Yi Xian grinned, "It wouldn't be too late to kill them first." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly disappeared on the spot. Shou Yan narrowed his eyes, and he was about to retreat when a powerful force suddenly descended from the sky. Following that, a sword light shattered, and Yi Xian was forced to retreat. A barbarian spirit person stood in front of Shou Yan. Barbarian spirit race's great elder, Man Tian. A 15th phase master. Man Tian looked at the nearby Yi Xian and said, "The bones of the last one who didn't give my barbarian spirit race any face have already turned to ashes." At the side, Shou Yan hurriedly fanned the flames. "Grand Elder Man Tian, there is a mysterious force behind this person, and it is not simple. Don't be careless." A smile appeared at the corner of Man Tian's mouth. "Comparing backgrounds? My barbarian spirit race loves to compare backgrounds the most." Saying this, he opened his right hand and made an inviting gesture. "Human, don't say that my spirit beast race is bullying you. Come, call someone over. P.S. I went back to my hometown for Chinese New Year. Too many people came to propose marriage. Vexation. My house's doorsill is about to be trampled open." Chapter 1885. Call for help. The barbarian spirit race had the ability and confidence to do so because their strength was the #1 race in the entire spirit region. Moreover, the barbarian spirit race had an extraordinary power standing behind them, and it was the illusion race. The illusion race was a genuine level 6 civilization. Even though it was only a rank higher than the barbarian spirit race, it was a gap that the barbarian spirit race would never be able to surpass. The difference between a rank 5 and a rank 6 civilization was like the difference between the heavens and the earth. Man Tian gazed at Yi Xian and smiled. Human, if no one is going to call for help, then I will. As soon as he finished speaking, the space in the surroundings suddenly trembled. In the next moment, numerous terrifying auras swept out from the surroundings, and then over 100 extraordinary experts appeared here. There were actually 5 at the 15th rank amongst them. Moreover, there were a total of 49 at the 14th rank, and the weakest amongst the rest was at the 13th rank. Shou Yan's face fell when he saw this lineup. The barbarian spirit race had mobilized such a large force, so they were obviously determined to obtain the divine treasure in Yi Xian's possession. Meanwhile, Man Tian suddenly glanced at the surroundings and smiled. Everyone, this person killed members of my barbarian spirit race, so my barbarian spirit race is absolutely irreconcilable with him. This is a personal enmity between my barbarian spirit race and him, so I hope that all of you won't interfere. Meanwhile, a voice suddenly resounded from the shadows. If your barbarian spirit race wants to take that human sword for yourself, then just say it. Why be so hypocritical? Man Tian's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he suddenly turned around and punched. Bang! Space suddenly collapsed over 1 kilometer away, and then an afterimage retreated explosively for 5,000 kilometers. Man Tian glanced at the afterimage and smiled. I said that because I wanted to give you some face. Since you don't want to give me face, then don't blame my barbarian spirit race. As soon as he finished speaking, the experts from the barbarian spirit race vanished on the spot, and the afterimage in the distance was instantly obliterated. The experts in the surroundings were shocked and they witnessed this scene. The barbarian spirit race was really overbearing. However, no one dared to resist. The strength of a single barbarian spirit race wasn't invincible. What they truly feared was the illusion race that stood behind the barbarian spirit race. Back then, the barbarian spirit tribe wasn't that strong. The reason they suddenly rose was because a woman from the barbarian spirit tribe married into the illusory tribe. From then on, the barbarian spirit race's status rose with the tide, and no force in the entire spirit realm dared to not give them face. As time passed, the barbarian spirit race also grew stronger and stronger. Of course, it also grew more and more domineering. However, none of the forces dared to provoke them. In the dark, some experts had already retreated. They were also interested in the sword in Yi Xian's hand. Not only could it ignore the pressure of time and space and the abyss of time and space, it could also enter the 7th layer of time and space. Even the entire spirit realm did not have such a divine item. However, with the barbarian spirit tribe present, they knew that they had no hope at all. A smile appeared on Man Tian's face when he saw the experts hiding in the surrounding scatter. He looked at Shou Yan, who was not far away. Shou Yan immediately said, Great Elder Man Tian, from now on, my spirit beast race will follow the lead of the barbarian spirit race. Man Tian was very satisfied and slightly nodded. The patriarch has already said that although your spirit beast race has submitted to my barbarian spirit race, my barbarian spirit race will not interfere in your spirit beast race's matters. However, if my barbarian spirit race has any orders in the future, Shou Yan quickly said, my spirit beast race will definitely obey. Man Tian smiled. Very good. After saying that, he turned his head and looked at Yi Xian, who was not far away. Human, I know that you were healing a moment ago. Have you healed your injuries? Yi Xian smiled and said, I'm fine. Man Tian smiled and said, don't say that my barbarian spirit race is bullying you. You can call for more people, as many as you want. However, Yi Xian shook his head. No need. After saying that, he suddenly disappeared. Space-time folding. In the distance, Man Tian slightly narrowed his eyes and raised his arm to block. Boom! Man Tian retreated several thousand feet, and just as he stopped, Yi Xian appeared in front of him once again. In an instant, a wave of sword light directly submerged him. Square-inch sword domain. Chi 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 chi. Tearing sounds resounded ceaselessly from within the wave of sword light. Right at that moment, a powerful force suddenly erupted from within the wave of sword light. The sword light shattered, and a figure retreated repeatedly. It was Man Tian. When Man Tian stopped, the expressions of all the experts became solemn. Because at this moment, Man Tian's entire body was covered in dense sword scars. It was as if he had been dismembered, and it was extremely shocking. In the distance, Shou Yen stared fixedly at the distant Yi Xian, and the depths of his eyes were solemn. At that moment, he suddenly discovered that Yi Xian's sword wasn't only powerful, but his sword skills were also terrifying. Who was this human? The solemn expression in Shou Yan's eyes gradually turned into worry. In front of Yi Xian, Man Tian glanced at his own body, and in the next moment, his expression became ferocious. He looked at Yi Xian and said, "Human, you have successfully angered me, you." At that moment, a sword suddenly slashed down, and Man Tian's voice came to an abrupt stop. Man Tian raised his arm to block. Bang! The sword light shattered, and Man Tian was blasted 3 kilometers back. As soon as he stopped, his right arm split open and blood sprayed out. Meanwhile, Yi Xian had suddenly vanished on the spot. Man Tian was shocked, and he swiftly raised his left hand to block before spinning it. Cage. As soon as his voice resounded, Yi Xian suddenly stopped because the area of spacetime he was in had become a spacetime cage. Meanwhile, Man Tian said, "Fall." As soon as he finished speaking, the spacetime where Yi Xian was in had suddenly transformed into an abyss, and Yi Xian fell rapidly. A wisp of a smile appeared on the corners of Man Tian's mouth, but it quickly froze because Yi Xian had suddenly returned to reality. Man Tian's eyes narrowed slightly when he saw this, and he seemed to have thought of something. His gaze descended onto the green profound sword in Yi Xian's hand. "It's your sword." Yi Xian didn't waste his breath, and he just raised his hand and slashed. Hiss! A strand of sword light tore through the battlefield. A trace of ruthlessness flashed through Man Tian's eyes. He took a step forward and punched out with his left hand. The powerful force contained within his fist directly tore the space in front of him apart, and Yi Xian's sword light was instantly destroyed. But right at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly appeared above Man Tian and slashed with his sword. Drawing the sword to decide life and death. The powerful force of this sword slash instantly tore space apart. Man Tian's pupils constricted. He didn't dare to take Yi Xian's sword head-on, because Yi Xian's sword could break through his defenses. The instant Yi Xian's sword descended, Man Tian's figure trembled. Space folded, and he directly appeared 3 kilometers away. He had just stopped when a flying sword slashed at him. Its speed was extremely fast. Because this was also a spatial folding technique. Man Tian was greatly alarmed. At this moment, he had nowhere to dodge and could only face it head-on. He didn't have time to think, and he used his left hand to block. Bang! Under the gazes of everyone, the swords on Man Tian's left hand shattered, and he retreated explosively. In the distance, Yi Xian was about to attack again, but right at this moment, his expression suddenly changed, and he swiftly turned around. At this moment, a fist smashed towards him like a tsunami. Yi Xian hurriedly withdrew his sword to defend himself. Rumble. Along with an explosion, the space where Yi Xian was instantly transformed into a pitch-black spacetime black hole. At the instant that Yi Xian fell into the spacetime black hole, the profound azure sword in his hand trembled violently and hurriedly brought him out of the spacetime black hole. After coming out, Yi Xian turned around and saw a man from the barbarian spirit tribe standing not too far away. He wore an embroidered robe, had a tall figure, and had long hair that draped over his shoulders. He emanated an extremely terrifying pressure. Man Qing, the current patriarch of the barbarian spirit tribe. Man Qing sized up Yi Xian, and then his gaze descended onto the profound azure sword in his hand. Good sword. Meanwhile, Man Tian walked over to Man Qing's side. Patriarch. Man Qing looked at Yi Xian and said with a smile, "You possess such strength at such a young age, so I presume you're not an ordinary person. Since you're not an ordinary person, then you should know of my barbarian spirit tribe. Since you know of my barbarian spirit tribe, why do you dare to become enemies with my barbarian spirit tribe?" Yi Xian smiled and said, "It seems that your barbarian spirit tribe wants to become enemies with me, right?" Man Qing shook his head. "My barbarian spirit tribe wants to kill you because it thinks highly of you. What qualifications do you have to become enemies with my barbarian spirit tribe?" Yi Xian gave him a thumbs up. Amazing. Man Qing smiled and said, "No matter who you are or where you came from, today, I will shatter your body, imprison your soul, and let you be burned by spirit flames for eternity. I want the world to understand that those who offend my barbarian spirit tribe can only beg for death." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly vanished on the spot. In the distance, Yi Xian's pupils constricted, and he swiftly drew his sword and slashed. Rumble. Yi Xian was directly sent flying several thousand feet away, but before he could stop, several afterimages suddenly swept over. Man Tian and the other 15th stage barbarian spirit tribe experts also attacked. Yi Xian quickly displayed his invincible sword domain. Bang! As soon as the invincible sword domain appeared, it collapsed, and his whole body was directly thrown into the space-time abyss. Just as he escaped from the space-time abyss, a fist mark suddenly attacked him. Man Qing. Yi Xian raised his sword horizontally to block it. Bang! The profound cyan sword in Yi Xian's hand violently trembled, and he rapidly retreated. At this time, 15th stage barbarian spirit tribe experts suddenly rushed towards him from all directions, not giving him a chance to catch his breath. The retreating Yi Xian's eyes flashed with hostility, and he suddenly slashed forward with his sword. Square-inch sword domain. Bang! A wave of sword light instantly submerged him and the 15th stage barbarian spirit tribe experts. There was a moment of silence. Bang! The sword light shattered, and a figure flew out. It was Yi Xian. When Yi Xian came to a stop, his left arm had already disappeared. Not only that, but his entire body was covered in cracks and bones could be seen in many places. He was in an extremely miserable state. In the distance, Man Qing looked at Yi Xian and said with a smile, "Come, call him over." Right at this moment, the space above Man Qing suddenly trembled violently. Man Qing frowned slightly when he witnessed this scene. Someone's really coming? It didn't take long for that space to turn into a vortex, and a middle-aged man walked out from within the vortex. When he saw who it was, Man Qing burst into laughter. "Ha! Human, your men aren't here, but mine are." The middle-aged man in front of him was the patriarch of the illusory tribe. After the illusion tribe leader came out, he scanned the surroundings. Very quickly, his gaze landed on Yi Xian. When he saw Yi Xian's appearance, the illusion tribe leader's legs softened and he almost knelt down. Chapter 1886. At this moment, the patriarch of the illusion race was astounded to the extreme. Why is young Master Yi in such a miserable state? Meanwhile, Man Qing walked over to the patriarch and bowed respectfully. "Patriarch Huan Ming, what are you doing here?" "The illusion race?" As soon as these words were spoken, everyone in the surroundings was stunned. The patriarch of the illusion race? A grade 6 civilization? Huan Ming paid no attention to Man Qing, and he just suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian's expression instantly changed, and he was about to attack. Meanwhile, Huan Ming hurriedly said, "Yi. Young Master Yi, I'm on your side. I'm on your side. He's on my side." As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was stunned. Man Qing and Man Tian were petrified on the spot. On my side? What's going on? Yi Xian gazed at Huan Ming and frowned. On your side? Meanwhile, Man Qing suddenly appeared in front of Huan Ming, and he hurriedly said, Patriarch Huan Ming, do you know this human? Huan Ming suddenly turned around and slapped him. Bang! Man Qing didn't even have time to react before his body was blasted into pieces. Everyone here was speechless. Huan Ming glanced coldly at Man Qing, who was slightly stunned. What human? He's called Young Master Yi. Young Master Yi. At this moment, Man Qing's mind had gone blank, and the faces of the other experts of the barbarian spirit race had turned ghastly pale. As for Shou Yan, his figure had even started to tremble. Huan Ming bowed slightly to Yi Xian and spoke in a trembling voice, Young Master Yi, what happened? Yi Xian spoke solemnly, Are you sure you didn't mistake me for someone else? Huan Ming hesitated for a moment, and then he withdrew a portrait. The person in the portrait was Yi Xian. Yi Xian frowned slightly when he saw the portrait. What's this? Huan Ming hurriedly said, A senior gave it to me. It's that senior in a plain dress. Yi Xian was stunned. Huan Ming knew that he wasn't mistaken when he saw the expression on Yi Xian's face. Yi Xian suddenly glanced at Man Qing. The barbarian spirit race is a subordinate race of your illusion race? Huan Ming nodded. Yes. One of our clan's elders has formed a marriage alliance with the barbarian spirit tribe. Therefore. As he said that, he seemed to have thought of something and his pupils suddenly shrank. Young Master Yi, were they the ones who attacked you? Yi Xian nodded. They ganged up on me. You even wanted to exterminate my entire clan. Huan Ming was stunned, and then he hurriedly said, Young Master Yi, my illusory race isn't related to the barbarian spirit race at all. It has nothing to do with me. Yi Xian was speechless. The expressions of Man Qing and the others became unsightly to the extreme when they heard Huan Ming. Of course, they were terrified to the extreme as well. Who was this human in front of him? How could the patriarch of the illusion race be so humble? As soon as he finished speaking, the heads of the tens of thousands of experts of the barbarian spirit race fell to the ground before Man Tian could even react, and blood instantly dyed the ground red. Man Tian slumped to the ground when he witnessed this scene. The beast spirit race was gone. It was gone just like that. Man Qing, who hadn't died completely, was ashen, and his entire soul was trembling. The once glorious barbarian spirit race was gone just like that. Even though their heads had been chopped off, their souls were still there. Right when the experts of the illusion race were about to destroy the souls of the barbarian spirit race's experts, the green profound sword in Yi Xian's hand suddenly flew out, and then it started to madly absorb the souls of the barbarian spirit race's experts. The experts of the illusion race gazed at Huan Ming when they witnessed this scene. Huan Ming glanced at the green profound sword, and then he waved his hand. All the experts of the illusion race immediately moved aside. At this moment, Shou Yan suddenly ran in front of Yi Xian. He knelt down and said in a trembling voice, Young Master Yi, my spirit beast race has eyes but failed to see. Please be magnanimous and let my spirit beast race off. Yi Xian smiled and said, You're begging the wrong person. You should be begging the patriarch of the illusion race. Shou Yan hurriedly shook his head. Young Master Yi, my beast spirit race is willing to submit to you. So long as you're willing to show mercy, my beast spirit race is willing to do anything. Yi Xian remained silent. Shou Yan was delighted when he saw Yi Xian remain silent, and he hurriedly said, Young Master Yi, from this moment onward, my beast spirit race is willing to follow you. Yi Xian suddenly shook his head. I'm feeling a little dizzy. I need to rest. Shou Yan's face instantly turned ghastly pale. Meanwhile, Huan Ming suddenly said, Slash. As soon as he finished speaking, countless experts of the illusion race charged into the beast spirit world below. In the next moment, numerous bloody heads shot into the sky. They weren't able to resist at all. Meanwhile, Shou Yan suddenly roared furiously, "Ancestor summon." As soon as he finished speaking, a ray of white light suddenly shot into the sky from within the beast spirit world. Meanwhile, Huan Ming suddenly pressed his right hand down. Bang! The ray of white light exploded into pieces, and the souls of the beast spirit race's ancestors within it were instantly crushed. Yi Xian's expression instantly became solemn when he witnessed this scene. The strength of the illusion race's patriarch wasn't just ordinary. Meanwhile, the green profound sword suddenly flew into the beast spirit world, and then it madly absorbed the souls of the beast spirit race's experts. Right at this moment, Shou Qing suddenly gazed at Yi Xian. "Who exactly are you?" Yi Xian issued a command in his heart, and the green profound sword directly entered the space between Shou Qing's brows and absorbed his soul. After that, the green profound sword entered the space between Man Tian's brows. Bang! Man Tian was instantly absorbed. Huan Ming glanced at the green profound sword, and then he said, "Young Master Yi, was this sword forged by that senior?" Yi Xian nodded. Huan Ming's expression became solemn when he saw this. "No wonder." Yi Xian suddenly said, "Senior, I need to recuperate." As he spoke, he entered the Shao Ta. Recuperate. His body had almost been shattered by the group attack just now, and he was in an extraordinarily miserable state. After Yi Xian entered the Shao Ta, Huan Ming glanced coldly at the surroundings and said, "Investigate and see if young Master Yi has any other enemies." Yes. Some of the experts of the illusion race bowed slightly and left. Huan Ming closed his eyes slowly. At this moment, he heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. Fortunately, young Master Yi is fine. Otherwise, he really didn't dare to imagine the consequences. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly appeared here. At this moment, Yi Xian's injuries had completely healed. A wisp of surprise flashed through Huan Ming's eyes when he saw that Yi Xian's injuries had completely healed. That was too swift. Yi Xian cupped his fists and said, "Thank you, senior." Huan Ming hurriedly shook his head, "It's nothing." If it wasn't for Senior Su Kun, then the old man would have probably been unable to take another step forward in his cultivation. "Qing, Yi Xian spoke solemnly, "Where's Qing now?" Huan Ming shook his head and laughed bitterly, "I don't know. That day, she only passed by the illusory Nether tribe and then left. As for where she went, I don't dare to ask." Yi Xian was speechless. Huan Ming continued, "Young Master Yi, the matter here has come to an end. Why don't you come with me to the illusion race?" Yi Xian was about to speak when the space in the distance suddenly trembled. Huan Ming frowned slightly, and then he turned around. A man had suddenly walked out from that expanse of space. The man had a triangular head and a strange blood-red talisman mark on the center of his forehead. It wasn't his main body, it was just a shadow. It was the ancestor of the spirit beast race, Ye Yao. He was the one who'd led the spirit beast race into a grade 5 civilization. Ye Yao gazed at Huan Ming, and then his gaze descended onto Yi Xian. "My spirit beast race was annihilated because of you." Yi Xian was about to speak when Huan Ming suddenly said, "My illusion race was annihilated." Ye Yao gazed at Huan Ming, a rank 17 expert. Huan Ming smiled, "You were able to notice that I'm at the rank 17. Looks like you're not simple." Ye Yao suddenly smiled, "Is rank 17 very strong?" Huan Ming smiled slightly. "To some people, it's not strong, but to you, forgive me for being blunt, but do you dare to show your true body?" Ye Yao stared at Yi Xian. "The hatred of the extermination of my clan is absolutely irreconcilable." As he spoke, his body gradually became illusory. "P.S. Today, I'm going to kill a pig and eat pig rice. Haha. Chapter 1887. Once Yao vanished, Huan Ming suddenly said, "Send my order to search for him throughout the universe." An old man behind Huan Ming bowed slightly, understood. As soon as he finished speaking, he vanished on the spot. Huan Ming turned around to gaze at Yi Xian. "Young Master Yi, this place is probably no longer safe. Come with me to the illusion race." Yi Xian fell silent for a short while before he said, "Can you give me 3 days of time?" Huan Ming nodded, "Of course." Yi Xian turned around and left. He had to give them some instructions. Once Yi Xian left, Huan Ming suddenly turned around. "Who is it?" Space trembled slightly in the distance, and then a woman appeared before the experts of the illusion race. If Yi Xian was here, he would definitely be pleasantly surprised. Because it was none other than Mu Niannian. Huan Ming gazed at Mu Niannian with a trace of vigilance in his eyes. He couldn't see through this woman. Huan Ming spoke solemnly, "Who are you?" Mu Niannian smiled, "I'm his older sister." Huan Ming was slightly stunned. "Older sister?" The corners of Mu Niannian's mouth curled up slightly. "Yes." Huan Ming hurriedly cupped his fists. "May I know what orders you have for me?" Mu Niannian asked, "Does your illusion race have any opponents?" Huan Ming spoke solemnly, "We do." Mu Niannian said, "Go on." Huan Ming glanced at Mu Niannian. Even though he didn't know what she meant, he still hurriedly said, "My illusion race is located in the ancient exalted world, and there are 3 extraordinary powers there. One of them is my illusion race, the other is the ancient exalted clan and the ancient desolate race. My illusion race and the ancient desolate race are mortal enemies." Mu Niannian nodded slightly. "Then the ancestor of the spirit beast race, Yao, should be with the ancient desolate race." Huan Ming frowned slightly. "Why?" Mu Niannian smiled. "He knows that you've reached the 17th rank, and he dares to say that the enmity between us is irreconcilable. That's because he has the confidence to resist your illusion race." Ming Huan said solemnly, "It's impossible for someone from the lower realms to reach the great heaven ancient world." Mu Niannian smiled and said, "That woman in the plain dress is also from the lower realm." Huan Ming's pupils constricted abruptly when he heard this. After a short moment, he bowed slightly. "I understand." Mu Niannian continued, "Moreover, since he dared to speak so harshly in front of you, it means that the ancient desolate tribe might take action." Huan Ming's eyes narrowed slightly. He was just about to speak when the space before him suddenly became illusory. In the next moment, a figure appeared in front of him. The illusion clan. The illusory race member's face was pale and his eyes were filled with fear. "Clan leader, the ancient desolate race ambushed our illusory race. Our illusory race is gone." Huan Ming's expression instantly became ferocious when he heard this. The primordial clan. With that, he turned. "All clansmen, heed my command. Return to Grand Luo immediately." Mu Niannian suddenly said, "Wait." Huan Ming looked at Mu Niannian. Mu Niannian said, "If you return now, your entire army will be wiped out." Huan Ming said solemnly, "Miss, what do you mean?" Mu Niannian looked at Huan Ming. "The ancient desolate race and your illusory race should be on par in strength, so why did they dare to attack? You should know that if they fought you to the death, who would benefit from it? The ancient exalted clan, of course. There's no way they wouldn't understand this. But they still attacked us." Huan Ming's expression was a little unsightly. "The ancient exalted clan joined forces with them." Mu Niannian nodded. "That's right." Huan Ming clenched his fists. "Why would they join forces?" Mu Niannian said, "There are only 2 reasons. The first is the benefits. Joining forces to destroy your illusory race will bring you benefits. Please continue to the next page. The second is the threat. Even your illusory race poses a threat to them." Huan Ming's expression was dark. "It looks like they've already found out about my breakthrough." Mu Niannian nodded. "You can't bring your clansmen back to the ancient exalted world right now, because they've definitely made thorough preparations. If you return now, you'll be walking right into their trap. Huan Ming fell silent for a moment, then turned to Mu Niannian and bowed slightly. Please advise me, miss. Mu Niannian smiled. I have a very good idea. Huan Ming bowed again. Please speak, miss. Mu Niannian gently combed her disheveled hair behind her ear. Let me analyze it for you. You brought most of the experts of your race to receive that little fellow, so they must be extremely curious. If I'm not wrong, they must be doing everything in their power to investigate this little fellow's origins. But they won't be able to find anything. They'll definitely guess that if a human could make your illusory race send their entire race to receive him, how could he be an ordinary person? Coupled with the fact that you've just broken through, I would definitely guess that this human might be from a level 7 civilization if I were them. As she spoke, she gazed at Huan Ming. Their target seems to be you, but it's actually that little fellow. Huan Ming laughed bitterly when he heard this. Mu Niannian said, find a way to spread the news that he's from a level 7 civilization. However, he was taken away by someone, and he even brought many divine objects with him. As she spoke, she opened her palm, and 3 portraits appeared in front of Huan Ming. They were the portraits of the woman in a plain dress, the man in green, and the swordsman. Mu Niannian smiled. The 3 of them and Yi Xian escaped from a level 7 civilization, and they even brought some divine objects with them. Huan Ming was stunned, and then he said, You're asking them to look for them? Mu Niannian nodded. They will. Huan Ming hesitated for a moment before he said, Is that all right? Mu Niannian smiled, It's fine. Don't worry and do it. Leave everything to that little fellow. Huan Ming was speechless. Mu Niannian added, Also, you have to let them know that the 3 of them were heavily injured when they escaped from a level 7 civilization, and they've gone into hiding now. Huan Ming glanced at Mu Niannian. Miss, actually, he wanted to ask if this was too sinister. He didn't know how strong the man in green and the swordsman were, but he knew how strong the woman in a plain dress was. If the ancient Daluo clan and the ancient Desolate clan found her, wouldn't that be like entering the toilet with a lantern? It was too sinister. Of course, he didn't dislike it at all. Mu Niannian smiled. There's one more thing that you absolutely must remember. You have to let them understand that you're not looking for that little fellow to protect him, but to find those 3 people through him and obtain the divine objects from a level 7 civilization. Only then will your illusory race be able to escape from this vortex. Huan Ming bowed respectfully. Understood. Mu Niannian nodded, turned around, and left. Huan Ming suddenly asked, Miss, are they really from a level 7 civilization? Mu Niannian stopped in her tracks and smiled. What do you think? Huan Ming said solemnly, Did I underestimate them a little? Mu Niannian nodded. Yes, you did. With that, she turned around and disappeared into the starry sky. Huan Ming frowned slightly. I underestimated them a little. Could they be from a level 8 civilization? After a while, he turned around and left. The entrance to the ancient Daluo clan was currently at the entrance. This chapter is not over. Please continue to the next page. Countless experts had already gathered here. Among them, there were 2 17th stage experts, 23 16th stage experts, and several 115th stage experts. These experts were from the ancient Daluo clan and the desolate ancient sect. Leading them was the patriarch of the ancient Daluo clan, Daluo Tian, and desolate Xing. Daluo Tian looked into the distance and smiled. Brother Xing, do you think this Huan Ming would suddenly bring his entire clan to find a human? This is very strange. Desolate Xing smiled. That human is not simple. Daluo Tendo said, I've already sent someone to investigate. Desolate Xing was about to speak when an expert of the ancient Daluo clan appeared before Daluo Tian, and he said solemnly, Patriarch, according to the latest news, that human is from a level 7 civilization. A level 7 civilization. The expressions of all the experts changed when they heard this. Daluo Tian narrowed his eyes. A level 7 civilization? The exalted elder nodded. According to our men's reports, that human and 3 others escaped from a level 7 civilization, and the other 3 are heavily injured. The reason why Huan Ming brought so many of his clansmen to find that human, Yi Xian, was mainly because he wanted to find those 3 injured humans through Yi Xian, because those 3 humans brought back many divine artifacts from a level 7 civilization. Divine artifacts. Daluo Tian sneered. No wonder Huan Ming didn't just break through, he even brought all the experts of his clan to find that human. So it was for the divine artifacts from a level 7 civilization. Desolate Xing suddenly asked, those 3 humans are heavily injured? The expert of the ancient Daluo clan nodded. Yes. Desolate Xing and Daluo Tian exchanged glances, and then Desolate Xing said solemnly, they escaped from a level 7 civilization. In other words, they definitely know about level 7 civilizations, and they have divine artifacts. At this moment, one of the experts suddenly said, according to my clansman, that human, Yi Xian, has a divine sword. The one who spoke was the ancestor of the Spirit Beast clan, Yi Yao. Desolate Xing turned to look at Yi Yao. Tell me about that sword. Yi Yao said solemnly, that human, Yi Xian, is only a level 10 expert, but he can use that sword to kill a level 15 expert. Moreover, he can use that sword to ignore the pressure of spacetime and the spacetime abyss. He can even use that sword to enter the 7th layer of spacetime and ignore the spacetime black hole there. Daluo Tian frowned slightly. He can use that sword to kill a level 15 expert. Ye Yao nodded. Yes. Daluo Tian said solemnly, it seems like he really is from a level 7 civilization. Meanwhile, Desolate Xing spoke abruptly, those 3 humans. When he spoke up to this point, he exchanged glances with Daluo Tian, and then he said solemnly, we can't allow them to fall into the hands of the illusion race. As he spoke, he turned to look at the expert from the exalted clan. Do you have portraits of them? The expert from the exalted clan nodded, yes. Because the illusion race has sent people to search for them. As he spoke, he waved his right hand lightly, and then 3 portraits appeared before them. Daluo Tian immediately said, send my order. Gather the strength of the entire clan to search for them. Desolate Xing hurriedly said as well, send my order. Everyone from the ancient Daluo clan is to stop what they're doing and search for them with all our strength. The experts from both clans retreated. On the other hand, Desolate Xing and Daluo Tian became excited. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. They had escaped from a level 7 civilization. It was time to change their destiny. End of this chapter. Chapter 1888. In the Xiao Ta, Yi Xian stood silently as the spacetime overlapped in front of him. Spacetime overlapped. Soon, he overlapped the 1st to the 4th spacetime. However, he didn't stop there. He continued to overlap. And the 6th spacetime. It was very difficult. Because the 6th spacetime was as dense as the previous few spacetimes combined. Now, he wanted to overlap the 6th spacetime with the previous spacetimes. The difficulty was obvious. Most importantly, he didn't use the green profound sword this time. Because the green profound sword was breaking through, he was relying on his own strength. Time passed bit by bit. In front of Yi Xian, the 6th layer of spacetime began to overlap with the spacetime in front of him. Yi Xian's face gradually turned pale because the spacetime in front of him began to become unstable. Gradually, cold sweat appeared on Yi Xian's forehead. After an unknown period of time, Yi Xian suddenly pressed his right hand down. Bang! The spacetime overlapped in front of him. In an instant, an invisible spacetime pressure swept out from the spacetime in front of him, and the Xiao Ta trembled violently. At this moment, the Xiao Ta hurriedly said, young master, don't do anything rash. Yi Xian waved his right hand lightly, and the space-time in front of him returned to normal. Yi Xian took a deep breath. Although he was only at the 10th stage, with this move, he wouldn't feel any pressure even if he fought a 15th stage powerhouse, even without the green profound sword. He didn't completely rely on the green profound sword. The green profound sword was equivalent to a medium for him to communicate with the space-time. Without the green profound sword, he wouldn't be able to escape into the space-time. Now, he could enter the 6th space-time even without the green profound sword. Of course, without the green profound sword, he wouldn't be able to ignore the space-time pressure in the space-time abyss. At this moment, he actually understood why Qing forged the green profound sword for him. To increase his combat strength? That was definitely one of the reasons. Qing's real purpose was to let him learn from the green profound sword. The green profound sword was his best teacher. A smile appeared on the corners of Yi Xian's mouth when he thought of this, and his heart felt warm. The younger sister was definitely the biological younger sister, but the father might not necessarily be the biological father. After a while, Yi Xian left Xiaota. He did not attempt to fold and fuse the 7th spacetime because the 7th spacetime was too terrifying. It wasn't something he could control right now. As soon as he left Xiaota, Huan Ming appeared in front of him. Glancing at Yi Xian, Huan Ming said with a smile, "Young Master Yi has become stronger." Yi Xian smiled. "Senior Phantom, let's go to the illusory tribe." Huan Ming hesitated for a moment, then told him about the exalted celestial world. After listening to Huan Ming, Yi Xian fell silent. After a while, he looked at Huan Ming and said, "I'm sorry." Huan Ming shook his head, "Young Master Yi, please don't say that. If it wasn't for Senior Suqiong, I'm afraid it would have been difficult for me to break through in this lifetime. To me, I owe her a new lease on life." Yi Xian spoke in a low voice, "What do you plan to do now, Senior?" Huan Ming hesitated for a moment and said, "Young Master Yi, your older sister gave me some advice." Yi Xian frowned slightly, "My older sister?" Huan Ming nodded, "Your older sister." Yi Xian spoke in a low voice, "Senior, please describe her appearance." Huan Ming opened his palm, and the space above his palm suddenly warped. It didn't take long for the image of a woman to appear above his palm. Yi Xian was stunned when he saw the woman. "Sister Nian." "Sister Nian is actually here." Yi Xian hurriedly asked, "Senior, where is she now? Please continue to the next page." Huan Ming smiled bitterly, "I don't know." Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. "Sister Nian is really something. Since she's here, why didn't she see me?" And two. He naturally hadn't forgotten this younger sister of his. However, he hadn't heard any news about them in a very, very long time. However, he believed that the two of them definitely wouldn't be doing too badly. What a joke. One of them was Sister Nian, who even Qing had taken a liking to, and the other was the clone of the first Qing. How could they possibly be doing badly? Huan Ming told Yi Xian about Nian Nian's plan. Yi Xian was speechless when he heard that. Why is Sister Nian still so devious? She's asking the ancient exalted clan and the desolate antiquity sect to search for Qing, Dad, and Big Brother? That's too devious. Huan Ming suddenly asked, "Young Master Yi, will Senior Su Qiong and the others get angry if I do that?" Yi Xian smiled, "They won't." Huan Ming instantly heaved a sigh of relief. Yi Xian gazed at Huan Ming, "Senior, have they really gone to search for them?" Huan Ming nodded, "According to my people, they've started searching with all their might for Senior Su Qiong and the others. I just don't know if they've found them yet." Yi Xian fell silent for a moment, and then he seemed to have thought of something, and his expression suddenly changed. "This isn't good. If they can't find them, then they'll definitely come looking for me." Huan Ming's expression changed slightly as well. That seems to be the case. Yi Xian was about to speak when an expert from the illusion race suddenly appeared in front of him. The expert bowed slightly and said, "Patriarch, young Master Yi, the patriarch of the ancient exalted clan and the master of the desolate antiquity sect are rushing over here. Yi Xian's face fell when he had heard that. Huan Ming's eyes narrowed slightly. They're rushing over here? The expert nodded, yes. Huan Ming turned to look at Yi Xian. Young Master Yi, you're probably their target. We'll escort you away, you. Yi Xian suddenly smiled. Where to? Huan Ming fell silent. Where to? There was nowhere else to go. Huan Ming spoke solemnly. Young Master Yi, you leave first. We'll stop them. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. Can your illusion race fight too on their own? Huan Ming was about to speak when Yi Xian smiled. I'm their target. They'll definitely not let you go if I leave. He looked up into the sky as he spoke. I'll wait for them. Huan Ming frowned slightly. Wait for them? Yi Xian smiled. I'll wait for them. Huan Ming was slightly puzzled. Young Master Yi, you. Suddenly, the starry sky in the distance warped, and then a terrifying aura swept over. They're here. A cold light flashed through Huan Ming's eyes. Men. Countless experts of the illusion race appeared behind him as soon as he spoke. Yi Xian suddenly smiled. Senior Huan Ming, tell your clansmen not to attack. Huan Ming glanced at Yi Xian but didn't say anything. If a fight really broke out, he definitely wouldn't sit back and watch. In any case, he was determined to cling to Yi Xian. No one could stop him. At this moment, the space above their heads suddenly split open, and then 2 people walked out. It was the sect master of the ancient desolation sect, Huang Guxing, and the patriarch of the ancient exalted clan, Daluo Tian. Daluo Tian's gaze immediately fell on Yi Xian. You must be young Master Yi. Yi Xian smiled. Yes. Daluo Tian stared at Yi Xian. You're waiting for us? This chapter is not over. Please continue. Yi Xian nodded. Daluo Tian looked at Yi Xian, a trace of wariness rising in his heart. This human might be from a level 7 civilization. He had never seen a level 7 civilization, but he knew that someone from such a civilization was definitely not simple. At this moment, Huang Guxing suddenly smiled. Young Master Yi, you know the purpose of our trip, right? Yi Xian nodded. I know. You want to find those 3 people through me, right? Huang Guxing looked at Yi Xian. Will young Master Yi help us? Yi Xian looked at Huang Guxing and smiled. If I don't help, what will you do? Huang Guxing smiled. What do you think we will do, young Master Yi? Yi Xian fell silent. Daluo Tian suddenly said, Young Master Yi, we don't want to use force, but we hope that young Master Yi will cooperate with us. As long as young Master Yi is willing to cooperate, we won't hurt young Master Yi. Yi Xian said solemnly, Forgive me for being blunt, but you might not be a match for those 3. He paused for a moment before he continued, even though they're heavily injured and their strength has been suppressed, they're still not people that ordinary people can deal with. Heavily injured. Their strength has been suppressed. Daluo Tian and Huang Guxing exchanged glances, and a wisp of excitement flashed through their eyes. Meanwhile, Daluo Tian said, Young Master Yi, you said they're heavily injured. Can you tell me in detail? Yi Xian said solemnly, They're like me. They escaped, and they were heavily injured by an extraordinary force from above because they stole some divine artifacts from that extraordinary force. Huang Guxing suddenly asked. What divine artifacts? Yi Xian glanced at Huang Guxing, and then he said, I don't know anything else, but I do know that the man in the green robe has a super divine item in his possession. That divine item can directly wipe out the 8th layer of spacetime. Not only that, it can also change the nature of life. Daluo Tian's eyes narrowed slightly. The essence of life? Yi Xian nodded. Yes. Life is above spacetime. As he spoke, he glanced at Daluo Tian and said, I presume that you've come into contact with the life Tao as well. However, you probably don't know much about it. Daluo Tian nodded. I really don't. Yi Xian said, that man has some extraordinary divine artifacts in his possession. For example, he has a saint door. If one enters it, then one can reconstruct one's saint physique. Once one attains the saint physique, then one can surpass the spacetime Tao and disregard all spatial pressure, abysses, and black holes. The expressions of the experts from Daluo Tian became solemn when they heard this. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian said again, that azure-robed man is badly injured. Daluo Tian gazed at Yi Xian. How severe are his injuries? Yi Xian fell silent for a short moment before he said, his current strength isn't even 30% of his peak strength. Those divine artifacts in his possession can't be utilized at all. Huang Guangxing said abruptly, how can we believe you? Yi Xian glanced at Huang Guxing, and then he opened his palm. The green profound sword flew over to Daluo Tian and said, take a look at this sword. Daluo Tian glanced at the sword, and then his expression instantly became solemn. This. Yi Xian gazed at Daluo Tian and said, that green-clothed man was struck down when he fled, and then I took advantage of him. The divine artifacts in his possession are only of the lowest quality. He has at least 100 extraordinary divine artifacts in his possession. Any one of them can completely change one's fate. He's extremely weak right now, so it's the best time to kill him. Once he recovers. All of you understand. He didn't continue speaking at this point. End of this chapter. Chapter 1889. Heavily injured. Daluo and Huang Guxing glanced at each other when they heard Yi Xian, and then they didn't hesitate to make their decision. It was an extremely rare opportunity. It was worth it. Right at this moment, the ancestor of the spirit beasts, Yao, suddenly said, I think there's something fishy about this. Daluo and Huang Guxing looked at Yao, and the latter looked at Yi Xian and smiled, young Master Yi, why do I feel like you're setting a trap for us? You're asking us to look for that man in green clothes on purpose? Daluo and Huang Guxing looked at Yi Xian, and Yi Xian smiled, to tell you the truth, I want to work together with all of you because I want to obtain the divine treasures in that man's possession. However, I'm very clearly aware that my strength alone isn't enough, so I'm willing to work together with all of you. Yao stared fixedly at Yi Xian. There are 3 suspicious points. Firstly, according to my knowledge, the human race was created by the God clan, and the God clan is only a level 3 civilization. However, you said that those 3 people are from a level 7 civilization. This doesn't make sense. Secondly, you said that the strength of those 3 people was suppressed when they came to this universe. I'd like to ask how they were suppressed. How were they suppressed? Thirdly, young Master Yi from a level 7 civilization, why are you so weak? You're only at level 10. Is that reasonable? The All-Heaven Domain and Primordial Xing frowned when they heard Yao. At this moment, their minds were much clearer. All the experts here looked at Yi Xian and waited for Yi Xian's explanation. Yi Xian shook his head and smiled, how laughable. How truly laughable. An ant actually used your knowledge to judge a level 7 civilization. Don't you think it's laughable? As he spoke, he issued a command in his heart, and the green profound sword in Daluo's hand flew over to Yao. Come, take a look at this sword, and then please explain the spacetime Tao contained within it. Yao glanced at the green profound sword in front of him, and his expression gradually became heavy without him realizing it. With another thought, Yi Xian sent the green profound sword directly into the 7th layer of spacetime. Not only that, but he himself also followed the green profound sword into the 7th layer of spacetime. All the experts in the surroundings revealed solemn expressions when they witnessed this scene. A 10th phase expert entering the 7th layer of spacetime? What kind of joke was this? At this time, Yi Xian suddenly took the initiative to enter the spacetime abyss of the 7th spacetime. After entering the spacetime abyss, nothing happened to Yi Xian. The expressions of the members of the Ancient Desolate Clan and Ancient Exalted Clan became slightly unsightly when they saw this. This fellow could ignore the abyss of space and time. Ye Yao's expression turned extremely solemn. Because the current him couldn't even enter the 7th layer of spacetime, let alone the spacetime abyss within it. At this moment, Yi Xian returned. He looked at Ye Yao and smiled. Sir, can you explain why I'm immune to the spacetime abyss? Ye Yao's expression was slightly ugly. Meanwhile, the All-Heaven expert said abruptly, Young Master Yi is willing to work together with us? Yi Xian gazed at the All-Heaven expert. I have a condition. The All-Heaven expert gazed at Yi Xian. What is it? Yi Xian smiled. That green-clothed man has a white little fellow with him. I want that little fellow. Xiao Ta was at a loss for words. Meanwhile, the desolate clan Xing suddenly asked, What's that? A spirit pet? Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, Sort of. The desolate clan Xing gazed at Yi Xian in silence. Meanwhile, the All-Heaven expert spoke abruptly, I agree. Yi Xian gazed at the All-Heaven expert, You have to swear. Not only did the All-Heaven expert not get angry, he smiled instead. Because the more Yi Xian acted like this, the more it proved that he wanted to help them find the green-clothed man. The All-Heaven Tendo said, I swear that if I kill that green-clothed man, then the spirit pet in his possession will belong to you. Yi Xian nodded, It's a pleasure working with you. The All-Heaven expert gazed at Yi Xian, It's a pleasure working with you. Meanwhile, the desolate clan Xing said, Take us to him. Yi Xian closed his eyes slowly. Xiao Ta, it's time for you to show off. Xiao Ta spoke in a low voice, Young Master, are you really going to lead them to kill Master? You have to think it through. It's probably quite difficult for us to kill Master with our current strength. Unless we call him Big Sister Tianming. Yi Xian's face darkened. Xiao Ta, who exactly gave you the courage to act so arrogantly? Xiao Ta grunted coldly, Young Master, don't look down on me. I was modified by Big Sister Tianming. Yi Xian was speechless. Damn it. So it was Qing, or who gave you the courage? Yi Xian shook his head. Xiao Ta, can you sense where I am? After a moment of silence, Xiao Ta said, I can't contact Master. Yi Xian frowned. At this time, Xiao Ta said, But I have a way to find Master. Yi Xian quickly asked, What way? Xiao Ta said, Shaoling, She can contact Little White. Hearing this, Yi Xian was stunned. I'm so stupid, I actually forgot about Shaoling, Shaoling, was in Xiao Ta. Yi Xian quickly contacted Shaoling, At this time, Shaoling, was planting spiritual fruits in Xiao Ta. She loved to do this every day. Yi Xian looked at the All-Heaven expert. Wait a moment. With that, he entered Xiao Ta. Meanwhile, the All-Heaven expert frowned when he saw Yi Xian vanish on the spot. Meanwhile, Huang Guxing spoke via voice transmission. You can't trust everything he says. The All-Heaven expert nodded, Of course. So long as he helps us find that green-clothed man, then. When he spoke up to hear, a cold glow flashed through his eyes. Huang Guxing understood and nodded right away. Once they found that green-clothed man and the others, then Yi Xian would naturally lose his value. Right at this moment, Yi Xian appeared here, and he gazed at Huang Guxing and the All-Heaven expert. Come with me. He paused for a moment and continued, Just in case, please bring all the experts of your clans with you. The All-Heaven expert nodded, Of course. Yi Xian nodded, and then he turned around to look at Huan Ming and smiled, Patriarch Huan Ming, we can't continue working together. Huan Ming feigned an unsightly expression. Yi Xian gazed at the All-Heaven expert and Huang Guxing, Come with me. As soon as he finished speaking, he flew up on his sword and vanished into the starry sky in the blink of an eye. The All-Heaven expert fell silent for a moment before he said, Let's go. As soon as he finished speaking, he led the experts of the ancient exalted clan into the starry sky, and Huang Guxing hurriedly led the experts of the ancient exalted clan into the starry sky as well. On the other hand, Ye Yao's brows were knit together tightly. He was comparatively calm, and his intuition told him that there was something fishy about this. However, he had no way to stop Exalted Heaven and Huanggu Xing because he knew that they wouldn't give up on this opportunity. After all, it was a level 7 civilization. Up until now, they still hadn't laid eyes on a level 7 civilization, and becoming a level 7 civilization was their lifelong goal. Now that they had such an opportunity, they naturally had to seize it. Suddenly, Huan Ming said, "Why aren't you going with them and are pondering here instead?" Ye Yao's expression instantly changed drastically, and he gazed at Huan Ming. He was just about to speak when a wisp of a ferocious smile arose on the corners of Huan Ming's mouth. The enmity of annihilation is absolutely irreconcilable? Who do you think you are? As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly slapped his palm down. Bang! Ye Yao didn't even have the chance to react before he was blasted into the spatial abyss. Ye Yao descended madly from within the spatial abyss, and his eyes were filled with terror. He wasn't like Yi Xian, so he couldn't disregard the spatial abyss. But now, the experts of the ancient exalted sect had left, so no one paid any attention to him. Despair. Ye Yao fell into despair within the spatial abyss. Huan Ming glanced coldly at Ye Yao. Who the hell do you think you are? You can't even compare to half of young Master Ye's intelligence, yet you dare to speak about taking revenge. As soon as he finished speaking, he led his clansmen away. It didn't take long for Ye Yao to be completely annihilated. Yi Xian was flying through the boundless starry sky while Huanggu Xing and Huanggu Xing weren't too far away from him. Meanwhile, Huanggu Xing suddenly said, "Young Master Yi, can you tell us about that green-clothed man and those two others? We want to get to know them." Yi Xian thought for a moment and said, "That green-clothed man's skin is extremely thick, shameless, and wretched. You must be careful if you encounter him because he's truly shameless." Xiao Ta was at a loss for words. Huanggu Xing gazed at Yi Xian. "What we want to know is his strength." Yi Xian said, "Actually, his strength isn't particularly terrifying. The most terrifying thing about him is his shamelessness. He acts extremely shamelessly, so you must be careful if you encounter him." Huanggu Xing glanced at Yi Xian. "Is he very shameless?" Yi Xian spoke seriously, "Extremely." Huanggu Xing laughed. "Now I'm quite curious." Yi Xian was about to speak when Huanggu Xing suddenly asked, "Where's that green-clothed man now?" Yi Xian gazed towards the end of the starry sky and spoke softly, "I don't know the specifics, but I can find him." Huanggu Xing glanced at Yi Xian and didn't say anything else. Yi Xian suddenly sped up. About a day later, Yi Xian and the others arrived at an unknown starfield, a starfield very far from the exalted ancient world. Huanggu Xing's eyes flashed with wariness. "Young Master Yi, where are we?" Yi Xian shook his head. "I don't know." Huanggu Xing looked at Yi Xian. "You don't know?" Yi Xian gazed into the distance, whispering, "We're almost there." Almost there. All Heaven Celestial was just about to speak when Desolate Xing's voice suddenly resounded within his mind, "Be careful." Huanggu Xing nodded. At this time, Yi Xian disappeared into the distance on his sword. Huanggu Xing glanced at Yi Xian in the distance. "Let's go." About 2 hours later, Yi Xian suddenly said excitedly, "Everyone, I can already sense his aura." Saying so, his speed suddenly exploded. Behind him, Huanggu Xing narrowed his eyes. "Everyone, get ready." With that, he led the exalted ancient clan in pursuit. Huanggu Xing also hurriedly led the experts of his sect and followed closely behind. 4 hours later, Yi Xian suddenly stopped. He looked into the distance and said excitedly, "Found it." At the edge of the starry sky, there were 2 swordsmen. One of them was a swordsman dressed in a green robe while the other was dressed in a white robe. At this moment, the corners of grand overarching heaven's mouth curled into a smile, and he waved his hand. "Stop those 2 swordsmen." With that, the exalted clan experts behind him charged forward, quickly surrounding the 2 swordsmen. Chapter 1890. They were stunned. Regardless of whether it was the swordsman or the green-clothed man, both of them were slightly stunned. How did we get surrounded? Meanwhile, the green-clothed man turned around to gaze at Yi Xian, and his face instantly fell when he saw Yi Xian, that unfilial son. Yi Xian was speechless. The swordsman glanced at Yi Xian and grinned. He had a good impression of Yi Xian, and the little fellow was to his liking. Meanwhile, Huang Gu and Xing from Exalted Heaven appeared in front of the green-clothed man, and they stared fixedly at the green-clothed man. Show yourself. As soon as the voice resounded, two old men appeared behind the green-clothed man and swordsman. Both of them were actually at the 17th rank, and their gazes had descended onto the green-clothed man. Their divine sense had locked onto the green-clothed man, and they would attack immediately if the green-clothed man moved in the slightest. Huang Gu's eyes were filled with surprise when he witnessed this scene. Both of them were supreme elders of the ancient exalted clan, and they'd been in closed-door cultivation for a few hundreds of thousands of years. He hadn't expected that Exalted Heaven would actually summon them. They're really going all out. Meanwhile, Exalted Heaven suddenly said, "Attack. Attack right away. The first to strike gains the upper hand." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly clenched his right fist and smashed it forward. This fist shot straight towards the green-clothed man's head. The formidable force contained within his fist caused the starry sky in the surroundings to seethe. The green-clothed man frowned slightly. "What's wrong with you?" As soon as he finished speaking, he flicked his thumb lightly. Hiss! A ray of light flashed, and then the others didn't even have the chance to react before it stabbed into the center of the Exalted Heaven's forehead. In an instant, the surroundings fell silent. An instant kill? The Exalted Heaven is a 17th rank expert. He was instantly killed just like that? All the experts here were flabbergasted. On the other hand, Exalted Heaven's eyes were opened wide, and they were filled with disbelief. Who am I? What's wrong with me? At this moment, the minds of the Exalted Heaven had gone blank. On the other side, Huang Gu recovered from his shock, and then he gazed at Yi Xian and shouted furiously, "Human! How dare you deceive us? He's not seriously injured at all." Yi Xian blinked. "I apologize to you. Sorry, I lied." Huang Gu Xing's lungs almost exploded with rage when he heard this. He glared fixedly at Yi Xian, and then he looked at the green-clothed man and bowed slightly. "Sir, this is a misunderstanding. This is a huge misunderstanding." As he spoke, he pointed angrily at Yi Xian. "It's all because of this person. This person said that you were heavily injured, so he asked us to join forces to kill you." "You," the azure-clothed man suddenly said, "he's my son." Huang Guang's expression froze. Yi Xian looked at Huang Gu Xing. "Are you trying to sow discord between us?" Huang Gu Xing turned around and ran. Father and son? He knew that they had been tricked. At this moment, a sword suddenly pierced through his forehead. Chi! Huang Gu Xing's body froze, and then his body and soul disappeared bit by bit. At this time, the surrounding experts also came to their senses and fled. The green-robed man suddenly drew his sword and swept. Hiss! 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 In an instant, tens of thousands of heads flew into the air while blood sprayed through the starry sky like fountains. It was an extremely bloody scene. Amongst them included the two 17th phase super experts. A single strike. The ancient exalted clan had been annihilated. The ancient desolate sect had been annihilated. Exalted celestial and desolate Xing, who were still alive, were completely dumbfounded by the scene before them. We'd come all the way here to give our lives away? As if he'd thought of something, Exalted Heaven suddenly gazed at Yi Xian and spoke resentfully, "Human. I curse you. I curse you to die a horrible death." Meanwhile, the green-clothed man spoke abruptly, "Are you treating me like I don't exist? Exalted Heaven gazed at the green-clothed man and was about to speak when the green-clothed man casually swung his sword. Hiss! Exalted Heaven was instantly annihilated. The green-clothed man remained expressionless. You're cursing my son? What nonsense! As he spoke, he swung his sword once more. Hiss! Huang Guang was instantly annihilated. Yi Xian chuckled and hurriedly tried to flatter the green-clothed man. Father is invincible. The green-clothed man turned to gaze at Yi Xian, and he fell silent for a moment before he said, For the first time, I feel that you're truly formidable. You actually brought your enemies here. Of course, I admire your enemies even more. They actually followed you to find me. Why are your enemies so stupid? Can you explain it to me? Yi Xian was at a loss for words. The green-clothed man sighed softly. If you continue playing like this, then when will you be able to surpass the three of us? Tell me, do you have a chance to surpass us? Yi Xian hesitated for a moment before he said, Should be able to if I work hard. The green-clothed man glared angrily at Yi Xian. Are you talking about shamelessness? If it's shamelessness, then there's no need for you to work hard. You've already surpassed it. Meanwhile, Xiao Ta suddenly said, Master, Xiao Ta, can't bear to watch any longer. Didn't young master inherit his shamelessness from you? Yi Xian was at a loss for words. The green-clothed man opened his palm, and Xiao Ta appeared in his hand. He looked at Xiao Ta and nodded slightly. Impressive. Impressive. After Xiao Ta followed you, it's like he's changed towers. As he spoke, he suddenly took out a whip and lashed out. Awoo! Xiao Ta howled in pain. The green-clothed man glanced at Xiao Ta, and then lashed out with his whip again. Ah! With a shrill cry, Xiao Ta was sent flying to the end of the starry sky. The green-clothed man looked at Yi Xian, and Yi Xian's expression changed slightly, and he hurriedly said, Father, I really didn't want to bring them here to find you. They forced me to bring them here to find you. The green-clothed man just looked at Yi Xian, and didn't say anything. Yi Xian was a little flustered from being stared at like that. Intuition told him that the situation was not good. At this moment, the green-clothed man suddenly said, I feel that you've been living too comfortably. Yi Xian's expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly said, Father, I promise I won't come looking for you anymore. I'll take Xiao Ta away now. After saying that, he was about to slip away. At this moment, a sword intent directly locked him in place. Yi Xian smiled bitterly, and hurriedly looked at Swordsman beside him. Big brother. Swordsman hesitated, and then said, It's not my place to interfere in the matters between you and your father. Yi Xian was speechless. At this moment, Xiao Ta, who was at the end of the starry sky, suddenly said, Young master, call Sister Tianming. Yi Xian's face was full of black lines. Damn, Xiao Ta, can't you be more observant? I'm going to die because of you. As expected, the green-clothed man's expression instantly turned cold when he heard Xiao Ta's words, and he directly lashed out with his whip. At the end of the starry sky, Xiao Ta let out another shrill cry, and the cry grew further and further away. Yi Xian shook his head repeatedly when he saw this. Xiao Ta, oh, Xiao Ta, you should be a little more careful. The green-clothed man looked at Yi Xian, and Yi Xian hurriedly said, Father, I know I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. From today onwards, I'll rely on myself, I'll never. Shut up. The green-clothed man suddenly said, Do you think I'll believe your nonsense? Yi Xian was speechless. The green-clothed man sized up Yi Xian, and he fell silent for a moment before he said, I'll send you to a place. A trace of uneasiness arose in Yi Xian's heart. Where? The green-clothed man said indifferently, You'll know when you get there. Go there and properly train your sword Dao. Of course, to prevent you from being flashy again, I'll have to seal your sword. As soon as he finished speaking, he opened his palm, and the green profound sword fell into his hand. At this moment, the green profound sword had not completely broken through. The green-clothed man's right hand exerted force slightly. Buzz! The green profound sword let out a sword cry, and a powerful aura surged out from the sword. In an instant, the surrounding space became illusory. Even the 8th layer of space became illusory. I've broken through. Yi Xian was overjoyed. Meanwhile, the green-clothed man suddenly flipped his palm, and the green profound sword directly sank into the space between Yi Xian's brows. Boom! Yi Xian's body shook violently, and he was slightly stunned. But soon, his expression changed. He could not sense Xiao Hun. The green profound sword had been sealed. The green-clothed man suddenly said, "If your sword Dao can break through, the seal on this sword will automatically be removed." Yi Xian spoke in a low voice, "Father, where are you sending me?" The green-clothed man turned around to glance at Qin Shi, and this glance was able to see through all the territories in the world. After a short moment, he withdrew his gaze, "A place that's extremely dangerous for you." Yi Xian hurriedly said, "Can you give me a few days? I need to deal with some personal matters." The green-clothed man replied, "There's no need." As he spoke, he opened his right hand, and Xiao Ta appeared within it. He suddenly clenched his right hand, causing Xiao Ta to tremble violently, and then the strange space within Xiao Ta's world was instantly sealed by him. In other words, Xiao Ta wasn't a paradise for cultivation any longer. Because it couldn't stay like it was 10 years in the outside world any longer. The green-clothed man gazed at Xiao Ta in his hand. "If you're still so arrogant the next time I see you, then I'll break your legs." As he spoke, he placed Xiao Ta in front of Yi Xian. "Both of you better think about it." As he finished speaking, without waiting for Yi Xian to speak, he gently waved his right hand, and a sword ray tore through the starry sky. The next moment, Yi Xian and Xiao Ta were directly sent away by this sword ray. After Yi Xian and Xiao Ta were sent away, the green-clothed man sighed softly. Beside him, Swordsman smiled and asked, "What's wrong?" The green-clothed man said softly, "Heavens will has opened up too many shortcuts for this little guy, and this isn't a good thing." Swordsman was silent. The green-clothed man sighed softly. This little guy was getting more and more fancy. Most importantly, when he encountered difficulties, this little guy didn't think of using strength to solve them, but instead used some crooked ideas. He really didn't expect that Yi Xian would bring the enemy right in front of him. This kind of operation left him dumbfounded. At this moment, Swordsman suddenly asked, "Where did you send him?" The green-clothed man thought about it and said, "A place far away from heaven's will. Not only that, I've also completely concealed his aura and sealed his sword. Now, Tianming shouldn't be able to sense him." As soon as he finished speaking, a woman in a plain dress suddenly stopped in a mysterious galaxy. She turned her head and glanced at him before turning to leave. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.